Chapter 3654. The girls around her were all fawning on her, and the boys were all pursuing her, making it impossible for her to have a particularly good friend. So this curly bear became the only one she could talk to when she was lonely. She couldn't imagine what kind of state and feeling she would be after losing this little fellow in her life. In desperation, Shangwan Lanner was even ready to find the Hall Master of Spirit Jade Hall and mobilize everyone to turn the entire Spirit Jade Hall upside down. She must find the little fellow. And at this moment, Meng Jueguang, who had long been looking for an opportunity, came behind her in a timely manner. "Miss Shangwan, I'm Meng Jueguang, the steward of Welcome Pavilion. I saw a little curly bear here during the day, but I wasn't sure if it was your spiritual pet, so I didn't pay much attention to it." Meng Jueguang reported obediently. "What? You saw Little White?" Shanghai Laner noticed Meng Jueguang and quickly asked, "Where did you see it? Where did it go?" Meng Jueguang pretended to recall for a while before saying, "It seemed to want to slip into the mining area at that time, but it was discovered by a new disciple before it entered the gate. That new disciple kicked it without saying anything and put it into a bag and took it away, saying that he wanted to take it back to the cave residence to roast it or something. Roast it to eat?" When Shanghai Laner heard this, she was so scared that her beautiful face turned pale and she almost fainted. After a long while, she caught her breath and gritted her teeth and said, "What's the name of that new disciple? Why didn't you stop him?" "Miss Shangwan, please calm down. That new disciple is called Lin Yi. He's a new rogue cultivator from the secular cultivation world and has no quality. He has always been arrogant and unruly. I couldn't persuade him at that time, but because of the sect rules, I couldn't do anything to him, so I could only let him go." Meng Jueguang pretended to be indignant and said, "If I knew it was Miss Spiritual Pet, even if I had to risk being punished by the sect, I would definitely save the little curly bear. Linny, where is he now? Hurry up and bring me there. If Little White loses even half a strand of its hair, this lady will fight him to the death." Shangwan Laner changed from her usual pure and innocent image of a young girl and fiercely bared her teeth. "All right, this one will lead the way for eldest Mississippi." Meng Jueguang couldn't help but snicker in his heart. A little girl would be a little girl. Just a little provocation, and she would immediately fall for it. Meng Jueguang led Shanghai Laner straight to Lin Yi's immortal cave. Meng Tong, who had been squatting at the door and staring at Lin Yi, saw the two of them and hurriedly came up to greet them. "Eldest Miss, this is the new disciple, Meng Tong." He witnessed what happened during the day with his own eyes. "I asked him to come back in advance to keep an eye on Lin because I was afraid that Lin Yi would really roast the little curly bear and eat it. After all, the quality of the loose cultivators in the secular world of cultivation cannot be guaranteed." Meng Jueguang introduced Meng Tong and pretended to sigh. Shangwan Laner was not in the mood to listen to his sigh. She hurriedly asked Meng Tong, "Is that Lin Yi in the Immortal's Cave? How's my Xiaobai? Are you hurt?" Meng Tong glanced at Meng Jueguang. Then he said, replying to eldest Miss, "Lin Yi has been staying in the cave since he came back. But as for what happened inside, I can't guarantee. Maybe he has already started eating, ah?" Shangwan Laner was frightened by his words. She hurriedly pointed at Meng Jueguang and said, "Then what are you waiting for? Hurry up and break the door for me." "Yes." After receiving the order, Meng Jueguang raised his hand and directly broke the forbidden spell of Lin Yi's Immortal's Cave. He broke the curse of Lin Yi's cave directly. With his strength at the peak of the early stage of foundation building, this was naturally a piece of cake. "Xiaobai! Xiaobai!" Shangwan Laner hurriedly rushed in. Meng Jueguang and Meng Tong smiled at each other with a successful plot and followed in. Things had developed to this point. In their opinion, Lin Yi was already dead this time. What a big sin it was to kill Shangwan Laner's pet with intelligence. Not to mention this Welcome Pavilion. Even in the whole Heaven Stage Island's North Island, he would not have a foothold at all. Maybe they would tie him up and directly hand him over to the spirit beasts on the South Island, making him pay with his life. However, when they saw the scene inside the cave, Meng Jueguang and Meng Tong were instantly shocked. Woo, woo. That little curly bear, who was supposed to be on the verge of death, was hanging on Lin Yi's body, alive and kicking. It didn't look like it was injured at all, and it looked like it was having fun with Lin Yi. What was going on? Xiaobai, are you okay? Shangguan Laner, who had been so scared by Meng Jueguang that she did not dare to open her eyes, finally reacted at this time. The joy on the girl's face could not be concealed, and her hanging heart suddenly fell to the ground. Woo! Seeing Shangguan Laner, little curly bear immediately jumped down from Lin Yi and climbed onto Shangguan Laner's back with his short legs. His movements were extremely agile. How did he look like he was about to die from an injury? Behind them, Meng Jueguang and Meng Tong could not help but look at each other, and Meng Tong even exclaimed in disbelief, "What the heck? How is it possible? It looked like it was seriously injured and was about to die. I didn't know what I did." Hey! Meng Jueguang hurriedly covered his mouth, and Shangguan Laner turned her head and looked at him suspiciously. "What did you say?" Meng Tong wanted to cut off his own tongue at this time. What kind of mouth was this? Could this kind of thing be blurted out casually? That could cost someone's life. Fortunately, Meng Jueguang was quick-witted. Seeing that the situation was not good, he hurriedly responded, "Yes. We saw the situation with our own eyes at that time. How can we not know?" "Is that so?" Shangguan Laner looked at the two suspiciously, but she did not take it to heart. At this moment, the most important thing for her was that the small coil bear was fine. Phew! Only then did Meng Jueguang let out a sigh of relief. He fiercely glared at Meng Tong. Fortunately, this young miss was easy to fool. Otherwise, if the matter was really revealed, even he would be out of luck. As for Meng Tong, he was almost paralyzed on the ground at this time. He covered his mouth tightly and did not dare to make sound. Shangguan Laner was worried as she picked up the small coiled bear and checked it up and down. Although the little guy was alive and kicking, the big footprint on its chest was still very clear. Thinking of what Meng Jueguang and Meng Tong said before, Shangguan Laner couldn't help but stare at Lin Yi angrily. "Hey, Xiao Bai's chest, did you kick it?" "No, when I saw it, there was already this footprint on its body." Lin Yi shook his head and denied. Chapter 3655. However, there was a bit of inherent nobility and delicacy in her gestures. It could be seen that her background must be extremely deep. It was unknown which big shot she was the apple of his eye. However, seeing this young lady reminded Lin Yi of something that had always puzzled him. Since coming to the North Island of the Heaven Stage Island, the ratio of men and women seemed to be seriously unbalanced. Especially in the Welcome Pavilion, he did not see any female newcomers at all. What he didn't know was that the female cultivators on the Heaven Stage Island were usually concentrated on the West Island. Not only the local newcomers would go to the West Island, but also the women who were transmitted from the secular world would be directly transmitted to the West Island. "It's really not you?" Shanghai Laner looked suspicious. Under the complaints of Meng Jueguang and Little White, she had already preconceived that this Lin Yi was definitely not a good person, and that he was plotting against Little White. Did this chick have any brains? Lin Yi rolled his eyes speechlessly. He casually reached out and called the little curly bear. The little guy immediately let go of Shanghai Laner and ran back to him. His behavior was so intimate that even Shanghai Laner, the owner, was a little jealous. "Young lady, you should be very clear about the intelligence of your pet spirit beast. If I really kicked it, do you think it would still be so close to me?" Lin Yi glanced at Shanghai Laner and said, "This." Shangguan Laner was at a loss. Although her little curly bear had always been silly, at least it could still distinguish between good and bad. It could clearly distinguish who was good to it and who was bad to it. It should be known that her grandfather, Shanghai Tianhua, just reprimanded it, and this little guy had been holding a grudge for a long time. It refused to be close to Shanghai Tianhua no matter what. While Shanghai Laner was choking, Lin Yi originally wanted the little curly bear to identify the murderer himself. After all, according to his original speculation, the culprit who kicked him was most likely either Meng Jueguang or Meng Tong. Unfortunately, ever since the two of them came in, although the little curly bear ignored them, It did not show any obvious hostility. This made Lin Yi a little uncertain. Could it have nothing to do with these two? What Lin Yi didn't expect was that before the little curly bear fell into Meng Tong's hands, he had already knocked himself unconscious. Then, he woke up in a daze and wanted to escape, but he was directly kicked by Meng Tong. After that, he was in a dazed state, so he didn't recognize Meng Tong at all. At this time, he naturally wouldn't show any hostility. Then why is Little White here? What are you trying to do? Shangguan Laner saw that the little curly bear was so close to Lin Yi, and she couldn't help but get angry. What kind of soup had this little guy been fed? How could he be so close to a stranger? Lin Yi glanced at Meng Jueguang and knew that if the little curly bear couldn't testify himself, it was useless to talk about it. After all, this chick clearly stood on the opposite side of him. He didn't know what the other party's background was. If he continued to talk about it, there might be some trouble. He thought it through. Lin Yi simply said, "I just happened to see it, so I played with it for a while. I didn't have any intention at all. Since it is your spirit beast, you can take it away." "Humph. At least you know what's good for you." Shangguan Laner snorted. She already knew that she had wronged Lin Yi. She was a little embarrassed, but she still said proudly, "Seeing that you took care of Little White, I won't hold you responsible for abducting Little White. I'm leaving." With that said, Shangguan Laner called the little curly bear and wanted to leave, but unexpectedly, the little guy refused to get off Lin Yi. Even when Shangguan Laner reached out to hug it, it didn't care. Its 4 short legs were tightly lying on Lin Yi. Shangguan Laner was suddenly angry. "Hey, you traitorous Little White, I'm so good to you, but you don't want to go with me. Do you want to live with this stranger?" "Woo-woo." The little curly bear looked at Shangguan Laner pitifully, and then looked at Lin Yi. Under Shangguan Laner's angry stare, it finally let go of Lin Yi reluctantly. "That's a good boy." Shangguan Laner's anger turned into joy, and she walked out with a reluctant little curly bear in her arms. "Woo-woo, woo-woo." The little curly bear lay on Shangguan Laner's shoulder and desperately stretched out its 2 little paws to call Lin Yi. Lin Yi was confused, but the owner, Shangguan Laner, understood the little guy's meaning. She gave it a knock and said, "You still want him to come and play with us? Let me tell you, don't even think about it. Let a strange male disciple come and play with me. If Grandpa finds out, he will put me in confinement." "Woo-woo, woo-woo." The little curly bear was still crying. Shangguan Laner had no choice but to deal with it. Okay, then I'll try to find opportunities to come here to play in the future, okay?" "Woo-woo." The little curly bear finally stopped and waved its paws at Lin Yi reluctantly. Lin Yi smiled. The little guy was quite clingy, after all. His master was a little tsundere in comparison, but he wasn't a bad person. Who knew what would have happened if he'd been unreasonable and unruly? Carrying the little guy out of Lin Yi's cave house, Shangguan Laner glanced at Meng Jueguang and Lin Yi, who were following behind her, and said angrily, "Why are you two still following me? It's all your nonsense that made me so embarrassed." "Miss, please calm down. Maybe we were careless at that time." Meng Jueguang quickly apologized in fear and trepidation. Meng Tong simply shrank behind him and didn't dare to let the little curly bear see him. Just now, when he saw the lively little curly bear on Lin Yi, he was almost scared out of his wits. If the little curly bear hated him and showed it in front of this miss, then wouldn't he be finished? But fortunately, the little curly bear didn't seem to have any impression of him, which made Meng Tong feel relieved, but he still didn't dare to be seen by the little guy. If he attracted its attention and was recognized by it, what should he do? "Next time you can't see clearly, I will poke your eyes blind." "Who asked you to open your eyes and be blind? Do you think I'm easy to fool?" Shangguan Laner snorted with dissatisfaction, but the little girl didn't have any schemes. She didn't see that Meng Jueguang and Lin Yi were setting a trap for Lin Yi. She just reprimanded them casually and didn't really do anything to them. Chapter 36:56. When Shanghai Laner heard that, she felt that it was true. She immediately nodded and said, "Although what you two said is unreliable, I won't blame you for helping me find Little White. Thank you, eldest miss, for your forgiveness." Meng Jueguang and the other man nodded hurriedly. Okay, you two can go back. I'm leaving. Shanghai Laner immediately carried the small curly bear and left in a hurry. Her Shangwan family's rules were very strict. Now that the sky was dark, if she stayed outside for too long and was discovered by her family, she would be reprimanded again. Meng Jueguang and the other man watched Shanghai Laner walk away. Then they looked at each other and fell to the ground like a deflated ball. The scene just now really scared the hell out of them. If it weren't for Meng Jueguang's quick reaction just now and the fact that Shanghai Laner, the eldest miss, was easy to bluff, they might have been dug out today. If that happened, they wouldn't even know how they died. Ninth cousin brother, that curly bear was kicked half to death by me. Why is it still alive and kicking when it is in Lin Yi's cave house? Meng Tong was still scared, and he was puzzled. I also find it strange. Could it be that Lin Yi can heal it? That doesn't make sense. Even if he has good healing medicine, it's impossible for it to be effective on this kind of spirit beast, right? Meng Jueguang was also confused. Maybe this curly bear has a special physique and has the ability to heal itself? Meng Tong patted his head and said, that's possible. After all, spirit beasts like the curly bear are very rare. We don't know what kind of natural abilities it has. Meng Jueguang nodded thoughtfully. Compared to the ridiculous thing that Lin Yi could heal spirit beasts, it was obviously more reasonable that the curly bear had the natural ability to heal itself. After all, ordinary people would never think that Lin Yi's cultivation method was so special that he could actually use qi to heal people, even spirit beasts. Meng Jueguang sighed regretfully and said, this time, Lin Yi got lucky. Otherwise, if this curly bear died in his cave house, he wouldn't be able to explain himself. Then he wouldn't be able to explain himself. Eldest Miss Shangwan would definitely kill him. What a pity, it's all for nothing. Even if he escapes this time, with our ninth cousin's schemes, isn't it a piece of cake to kill him? Meng Tong flattered and then said, tomorrow, on the 25th, is the day of the newcomer's trial. I don't know anything, so I'm not sure. I'm afraid that I'll accidentally lose to Lin Yi. Wouldn't that be embarrassing for ninth cousin? So, ninth cousin, you have to give me some advice in advance. On the 25th of the first month, all newcomers would participate in the newcomer's trial. The purpose was to rush for the newcomers with potential to find a breakthrough in actual combat before the first newcomer ranking competition, so that they could quickly enter the Foundation establishment realm and stand out from the crowd. Then, they would become the focus of the 3 pavilions in the future. However, although everyone knew that the newcomer's trial would begin tomorrow, he had no idea what kind of trial it was, what kind of rules it had, or what kind of loopholes there were. Everyone only knew everything would be announced before the trial began tomorrow morning. Meng Jueguang laughed. You're quite impatient, kid. Don't worry. Although it wasn't announced in advance, the content of the newcomer's trial is more or less the same. However, the content of every newbie trial is more or less the same. I've already prepared a cheating device for you, ensuring that you'll be able to surpass everyone else. Getting first place will definitely be a matter of minutes. Cheating device? Ninth cousin, you're practically my second parent. Meng Tong's eyes suddenly lit up. You're not good at other things, but you're pretty good at flattering. Meng Jueguang snorted, but he couldn't hide the pride between his eyebrows. He paused and said, also, before tomorrow morning's trial, call the other newcomers over. I have something to instruct them. How can we let go of such a great opportunity to mess with people like Lin Yi? Okay. Meng Tong nodded repeatedly. He was happy to see them ganging up against Lin Yi. Early the next morning, under the organization of their senior brothers in charge, the newcomers of the 3 pavilions gathered in the main hall of the Welcome Pavilion. However, they didn't announce the rules of the trial here. Instead, under the leadership of the pavilion master, Hu Yunfeng, all the newcomers headed for the trial site in the back mountain. The so-called back mountain was not the back mountain of the Welcome Pavilion, but the back mountain of the 3 pavilions. In front of the vast primeval forest of tens of thousands of acres, the Welcome Pavilion, which occupied less than 100 acres of land, seemed insignificant and not worth mentioning. In the eyes of all the North Island cultivators, the back mountain was synonymous with heaven and earth treasures. If all the heaven and earth treasures in the North Island were divided into 10 bins, then the back mountain occupied 8 bins. Therefore, even knowing that it was full of danger, the cultivators still flocked to the back mountain. However, not everyone could enter the back mountain. The 3 pavilions clearly stipulated that the back mountain was a forbidden area in the North Island. Without the permission of the Elders' Union, no one was allowed to step into the back mountain. Violators would be killed without mercy. Out of the importance of the newcomers, the Elders' Union allowed the Welcome Pavilion to place the trial site for newcomers in the back mountain. Of course, this access was also limited. The newcomers could only move around in the periphery of the back mountain. As for the inner circle or the more central area of the back mountain, they couldn't enter. There was no need to worry about someone taking advantage of this loophole, because no newcomer could take advantage of this loophole. The top powerhouses of the 3 pavilions had set up layers of restrictions in the back mountain. The outer circle was 1 layer, the inner circle was another layer, and the central area had several layers. However, only the outer restrictions were open for the newcomer's trial site. The layers of restrictions inside could not be broken at all. In fact, even if there was a 1 in a million miracle and someone could break through the inner restrictions, there was no need to worry too much. Because not only would the elders in charge of guarding the back mountain notice it immediately, even if they left it alone, there would be no loss. It was true that the deeper one went into the back mountain, the more chances they had to encounter rare heaven and earth treasures. But don't forget, the benefits were always proportional to the risks. If one didn't have enough strength, even if someone took advantage of the loophole and slipped in, he would eventually become the food of those powerful spirit beasts. Naturally, there was no loss for the back mountain. Under the leadership of Pavilion Master Hu Yunfeng, the senior stewards of the 3 pavilions took their respective newcomers to the hall of the back mountain. Chapter 3657. Although the back mountain hall had its own group of personnel who were responsible for maintaining the restrictions and order of the back mountain, strictly speaking, it was still different from an independent department like the Welcome Pavilion. The biggest difference was that the back mountain hall had at least 3 elder-level experts stationed at all times. This meant that if someone intended to invade the back mountain, not only would they have to face the layers of restrictions, they would also have to be on guard against the siege of more than 3 elder-level experts. This was no trivial matter. This concerned the foundation and heritage of the entire 3 pavilions. The back mountain could not be lost, so it was reasonable for such a powerful lineup to be on guard. Under the surveillance of layers of guards, Hu Yunfeng led all the newcomers to the square of the back mountain hall, waiting for the instructions of the elder station there. As the trial site was in the back mountain, the newcomer trial was no longer a matter of the Welcome Pavilion itself, but also required the participation and coordination of the back mountain hall. Compared to Hu Yunfeng, the Welcome Pavilion Master, it was clear that the elder stationed at the back mountain hall had more authority, so his words naturally carried more weight. The group of newcomers held their breath and looked in awe at the 3 open-air chairs in front of them, where the 3 elders were sitting. This time was different from the previous public guidance day. Although Su Yuanzheng and the others were also elders for them, the nature of coming to the Welcome Pavilion was basically equivalent to going down to the grassroots level. Therefore, they deliberately suppressed their auras in front of the newcomers. The newcomers would only feel that they had a high status, but not necessarily that they were that scary. But the 3 that the newcomers were facing now were elder-level experts who were in a state of battle at any time. They did not suppress their auras at all, under the pressure of the 3 majestic and mighty auras. Although the newcomers had already advanced to the peak of the late stage of Heaven's stage, they still found it extremely difficult to breathe at this moment. Their knees began to tremble uncontrollably, and the weaker ones even directly knelt down in front of everyone. In this month of cultivation, those newcomers who did not have the strength of Heaven's stage great perfection had all broken through to the realm of great perfection because of the cave abode and the spirit jade. This was the difference between the Heaven Stage Island and the secular cultivation world. Spirit Jade and Cave Abode, these were the best cultivation resources. These three people were so strong. As an early-stage foundation establishment expert, Lin, he was not scared to the point of kneeling on the spot like the other newcomers. But at this moment, he was also facing great pressure. It had been almost a month since he came to Heaven Stage Island, but this was the first time he had seen such a powerful and undisguised expert. This was a terrifying existence that was far above him. From the bottom of his heart, Lin, he finally felt the excitement that he hadn't felt for a long time. What followed was the desire to become stronger. The strength of an early-stage foundation establishment cultivator was enough to sweep through the secular cultivation world. This made Lin a little complacent. Even after arriving at the Heaven Stage Island, he still felt that everything was under his control due to the relatively gentle environment of the welcoming pavilion. There was no sense of crisis. But now, Lin knew that he was wrong. He was so wrong. On this island, the early stage of foundation building was the most basic step, just like the golden class masters in the secular world. If they couldn't become stronger as soon as possible, they wouldn't be able to control their own fate. He could become an ant that could be crushed by others at any time. The rookies these days are getting weaker. The bald elder, sitting in the middle of the three open-air chairs, glanced at the rookies that were kneeling in fear. Although his voice wasn't loud, every word was like a heavy hammer that struck the depths of everyone's mind, causing them to unconsciously tremble. After a pause, the bald elder began to announce the rules of the trial. The rules were very simple. The rookies would be randomly placed in the periphery of the back mountain, and the most important trial task was to find herbs. The special basket in the back mountain hall would give points according to the value of the herbs. The final trial result would be ranked according to the points from high to low, and specific rewards would be given according to the ranking. This trial rule made Lin think of the Ice Palace trial in the secular world. The two were quite similar and could even be said to be exactly the same. Of course, although the rules were somewhat similar, the environment and competitors were very different from before, so they still couldn't be underestimated. However, there was one point in the rules that surprised all the new disciples. This time's training was not a competition between all the new disciples of the welcoming pavilion. Instead, it was a competition between the three pavilion's new disciples. Not only that, there were also clear boundaries for each of the three pavilions' activity areas. This made the Clear Cloud Pavilion's new disciples overjoyed. After all, if they were placed together with the rookies of the Soaring Sky Pavilion and the Mysterious Pavilion, they would definitely end up at the bottom. Then, this trial would be meaningless to them. But now that the rookies of the three pavilions were evaluated separately, it gave them hope. Especially the bald elder's next sentence. It made all the rookies boil with excitement. The top three in this trial will receive a foundation establishment pill as a reward, and the first place will also receive 10 pieces of spiritual jade as a reward. The 4th to 10th place will each receive 3 pieces of spiritual jade. As for those after 10th place, don't even think about it. Of course, these rewards can only be redeemed if you reach the most basic requirements. The top 3 could receive a foundation establishment pill. The entire crowd was in an uproar. Even if these rookies were ignorant, how could they not know about a pill like the foundation establishment pill that countless cultivators yearn for day and night? To any expert at Heaven Stage Full Circle, as long as their aptitude was passable, they would be able to reach foundation establishment immediately after consuming a foundation establishment pill. One had to know that these newcomers were now gathered in the Welcome Pavilion. Their ultimate goal was to successfully build their foundation within a year, and with a single foundation building pill, it was very possible that they could directly achieve that goal in one go. How could they not be excited? Of course, the foundation establishment pill was not the same as the foundation establishment pill. The foundation establishment pill was only effective when a person at Heaven Stage Full Circle broke through to the early stage of foundation establishment. Once they reached foundation establishment, it would be useless. Then, they would need the foundation establishment barrier breaking pill. However, the Foundation Establishment Pill did not have this drawback. It could be used as a Foundation Establishment Pill, a Foundation Establishment Barrier-Breaking Pill, and even an Experience Pill. After hearing such an exaggerated reward, not to mention the grassroots rookies of the Blue Cloud Pavilion, even the old fogies of the Mysterious Pavilion could not hold themselves back. Even the second-generation young masters of the Soaring Sky Pavilion had burning gazes. Chapter 3658. After successfully rousing the enthusiasm of all the newcomers, the bald elder smiled slightly. The original intention of holding the newcomer trial was not only to train the newcomers, but also to let them help gather herbs to refine strategic pills like the Building Foundation pill. After all the herbs gathered by the newcomers had to be handed over. If there was no reward and no hope of winning, these newcomers might not put in the effort, which would go against the original intention. However, the newcomers were still newcomers. While using the reward to boost their morale, in order to avoid unnecessary trouble, some ugly words had to be said first. The bald elder nonchalantly scanned all the rookies and finally said, "Now, all of you are clear of the rules, but there are 3 things that I have to emphasize so as to prevent any idiots among you from having thoughts that they shouldn't have. First, you can only move around the back mountain. Do not attempt to touch any restrictions. This old man guarantees that you will die miserably. Second, you only have 3 days. 3 days later, if you do not return here by noon, you will also die miserably. Third, the trial encourages competition. You can rob each other, but you must not kill anyone. If something really happens, this old man will personally take action and make you pay with your life. 3 things. Violating any one of them would result in a person's death." With that, the bald elder no longer cared about the newcomers who were scared silly by his killing intent. He closed his eyes and rested. As for the 2 elders beside him, they did not say a word from beginning to end. Their main responsibility was to guard the back mountain. As for presiding over the newcomer trial, it was just a small part-time job. "All right, everyone, go find your senior brother in charge and collect the special backpack for the back mountain hall. Once you've adjusted your condition, you can go on your way. Don't dilly-dally." Huyi and Feng took over the reins and issued an order. Yes, all the newcomers responded in unison, each one of them eager to fight, eager to try. "Junior brother Lin, after entering the back mountain, you must be careful. There are dangers everywhere, and during the trial, anything can happen. You must not be careless." Junior brother Xiao and junior brother Qiao as well. The bitter senior brother gave the special basket to the 3 of them as he warned them. Although the bald elder had already warned them that the rookie trial was strictly prohibited from killing people, the back mountain was so big. Even the periphery was fraught with danger. No one knew what would happen. If someone really wanted to kill someone, there was no need for him to do it himself. As long as he casually played some tricks, he might be able to kill the person. Lin Yi, Xiao Ran, and Xiao Honkai nodded. Although they had never entered the back mountain, they were still heaven rank experts. They still had this bit of vigilance in their eyes. Even though this savage forest that emitted an ancient aura was a holy land for cultivators that contained countless treasures of the heavens and the earth, yet at the same time, it was an enormous ferocious beast that chose its prey. It was unknown how many cultivators' corpses were buried there. Turning back to look at the other newcomers around Meng Jueguang, the bitter senior brother lowered his voice and said to Lin Yi and the other 2, "I accidentally overheard them saying a few words. It seems like they are prepared to join forces to deal with you guys in the trial. If possible, I suggest that you guys find a chance to meet up after entering the trial and move together. That way, you can at least look out for each other." This, Lin Yi and the other 2 looked at each other. They all had a difficult expression on their faces. Let's not talk about the fact that this trial would randomly send the newcomers to a location. It would be very difficult to meet up. Moreover, if they were to waste time searching for each other, it would not be worth it. Most importantly, Lin Yi was bent on finding the heart-devouring exquisite grass. Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai both had their own plans. The three of them could indeed look out for each other, but this would naturally limit their points. After all, if the three of them walked the same route, the number of medicinal herbs they would find would definitely be limited. Hence, the problem was these medicinal herbs could not be divided equally, right? If the three of them divided equally, then the final result would be that everyone's points would not be as high as the others. In that case, it would be impossible for them to get into the top three and ultimately miss out on the foundation building pill. And if the three of them did not divide equally, then who would get more and who would get less? That would be a bigger problem. On the other hand, if the three of them split up, although it would be more risky, the rewards would be greater. In the end, each person's points would definitely be much better than moving together. At least they would have a chance to fight for the top three. One must know that the reward for the top three was the foundation building pill. How could they give up on this opportunity so easily? Moreover, the bald elder had already clearly warned them not to kill anyone. As long as they were a little more careful, at least their lives would not be in danger. The risk was not especially high either. Based on this, it was obvious that it was more worthwhile for the three of them to split up. However, Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai looked at each other. Lin Yi usually treated them well. Wasn't this the time to repay him? If the three of them worked together and gave all the medicinal herbs they found to Lin Yi, then Lin Yi should have no problem getting first place. Thinking of this, the two of them felt ashamed of their previous selfishness. The two of them said at the same time, Senior Brother Ku is right. Let's think of a way to move together. Brother Lin has taken care of us so much before. This time, no matter what, we must fight for first place for you. In other words, all the medicinal herbs they found when moving together would be given to Lin Yi first. This way, the two of them would be giving up on the trial reward. This required a lot of determination. One must know that the temptation of the foundation building pill to these heaven stage full circle experts was unparalleled. Lin Yi smiled bitterly and shook his head. These two's intentions touched him, but his most important task this time was to find the heart-devouring exquisite grass. Compared to the foundation building pill that he planned to refine later, the trial reward of the foundation building pill was simply insignificant. And if he moved together with the two of them, not only would it be unfair to Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai, it would also be an additional burden to Lin Yi. I appreciate your good intentions, but there is no need. This is a rare opportunity. Don't easily let go of the reward that you should fight for. Otherwise, you will regret it for the rest of your life. Lin Yi advised seriously. Chapter 36:59. Although killing was not allowed during the trial, it was allowed to snatch herbs from each other. This reflected the difficulty of the trial. Just as Xiao Ran and Meng Tong had said, if the three of them fought on their own, then no matter how many medicinal herbs they found and how many points they earned, it would all be in vain. In the end, Meng Tong and the others would benefit from it. As such, not only would they end up with nothing, it would also be equivalent to giving resources to their enemy, Meng Tong. It would indirectly increase the difficulty for Lin Yi to obtain victory. This was a huge problem. Lin Yi thought for a moment and took out a map of the back mountains periphery that was specially prepared for every rookie. After studying it, he pointed at the intersection of two streams and said, "Then let's do it this way. We will act separately for the first 2 days, but 2 days later at noon, we will gather at the mouth of the three streams and return together. Time is of the essence, so don't push it around with me. Let's do it this way." Acting separately for the first 2 days allowed them to search for herbs to obtain points. Furthermore, it was relatively safer. This was because even if Meng Tong and company wanted to deal with them, they would not choose to do so early. After all, they could not kill. Even if they joined forces to beat up Xiao Ran and company, they would not gain any substantial benefits. If they wanted to take action, they would definitely do it at the end of the return journey. This way, it would be more convenient to snatch the fruits of their labor and maximize the benefits. As for the gathering 2 days later, the trio had Lin Yi presiding over it. Even if Meng Tong and company had the numerical advantage, they might not be able to gain the upper hand. When the time came, It was hard to say who would be the one to defeat who. Since Lin Yi had already put it this way, Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai naturally would not reject it. They could only nod in agreement. After all, Lin Yi's plan was not only more scientific and reasonable, it was also more beneficial to the two of them. Seeing that the three of them had agreed on a plan, Senior Brother Bitter felt that it was still a little risky. However, when he thought about it, as a cultivator, how could he not take any risks from beginning to end? The risks were always proportional to the benefits. This was something that could not be helped. All right then. In short, the three of you must be extremely careful. Don't be careless. Your enemies aren't just the other rookies. Don't forget that the back mountain is the source of the danger, exhorted the bitter senior brother. Lin Yi and company nodded. After everything was prepared, they went with the other rookies to the trial starting point on the square in the back mountain. At this moment, there were a dozen or so massive flying spirit beasts waiting at the starting point. This was the standard equipment of the back mountain hall. After all, their area of protection was the entire back mountain. Normally, they would have to rely on flying spirit beasts for everything. If they were to walk on foot, who knew how long it would take them to reach the scene of the incident? So it was a random drop method. When Lin Yi saw these flying spirit beasts, he finally came to a realization. Previously, when he heard the rules of the trial, he was still wondering how the newcomers would be sent to the outer area of the back mountain. He thought that there would be some sort of teleportation array or something, but it turned out that they would be airdropped by flying spirit beasts. After all the rookies stood on the flying spirit beasts, more than 10 flying spirit beasts took off at the same time. The scene was spectacular, causing the rookies to exclaim. Then, these flying spirit beasts, under the guidance of the Back Mountain Hall's experts, were split into 3 batches. They sent the rookies from the 3 pavilions to their respective trial zones. From the direction, they were going in complete opposite directions. This prevented the possibility of the rookies from crossing paths with each other to the greatest extent. Even if they wanted to, they would not be able to bump into each other. After flying for about the time it took for an incense stick to burn, the rookies standing on the flying spirit beasts were instructed by the Back Mountain Hall's experts. One by one, they were randomly dropped. Lin Yi roughly estimated that the starting drop point for 2 rookies was at least tens of miles away from each other. Such a journey would take a long time, even if it was a flat road. Not to mention in the vast forest where it was difficult to move an inch. From the looks of it, even if the rookies had plans to meet up and work together, it would be difficult for them to meet each other within a day. Generally speaking, it would be pretty good if they could gather after 2 days. Such a rule clearly had a special purpose. Although the rookie trial encouraged competition, it did not wish to see vicious competition between the rookies. If the rookies were to be gathered together from the beginning, it would eventually result in a chaotic battle. No one would put in the effort to search for herbs, and instead, they would place their hopes on snatching the fruits of others' labor. This clearly did not match the original intention of the 3 pavilions to let the rookies gather herbs as a strategic reserve. And now that they were separated from each other, at least for the first 2 days, the rookies would not be focused on killing each other. Instead, they would shift their attention to searching for herbs. As for the competition, that would be 2 days later. When both sides had enough points, the competition would become more intense, wouldn't it? After seeing through the intentions of the trial organizer, Lin Yi could not help but smile. However, this was just right. At least for the first 2 days, there would not be any blind people obstructing him. The only problem left was whether or not he could find the heart-devouring, exquisite grass. Although Senior Brother Bai had mentioned that there was a heart-devouring, exquisite grass in the back mountain, the back mountain was huge. It was unknown if he could find it in the short span of 3 days. Furthermore, even if it existed, it might not be in the periphery. If it was only in the inner periphery of the back mountain, or even deeper, it would be a pain in the ass. I hope the situation won't be too bad. Lin Yi prayed secretly. Then he jumped down from the back of the flying spirit beast under the signal of the experts in the back mountain hall. For the convenience of the rookies, the flying spirit beast did not fly high, and one could reach the highest canopy by reaching out. After Lin Yi flipped over, he was in such an impenetrable canopy. Whoosh! After getting down from the back of the flying spirit beast, before he stood still, he immediately felt a murderous intent coming from behind. At the same time, he also received a warning from the jade pendant. He did not have time to look back and immediately activated the butterfly's subtle steps. That was how he managed to dodge the sneak attack. Just as Lenny dodged, a crudely made but unusually sharp wooden spear whizzed past the corner of his clothes and finally penetrated the trunk of the giant tree. He turned around and saw an ape-type spirit beast standing on a tree branch about 5 or 6 meters away from him. It had black fur all over its back, and its body wasn't particularly muscular, but the hostility in its scarlet eyes was enough to send shivers down one's spine. The black ape roared at through the air. Then it suddenly flew towards him. Its speed and agility really surprised Lin-E. Chapter 3660. If it was outside, it might not be able to pose any threat to him. However, this was its home ground. Who knew how strong this guy could be? At this time, for the sake of safety, Lin-E did not want to waste his vital chi on this black ape. He immediately turned around and wanted to use the butterfly subtle steps to get rid of it. Even if this was the opponent's home ground, Lin-E still had absolute confidence in his speed. However, to Lin-Yi's surprise, even if he was so patient, the black ape was still chasing him. It seemed that it would not stop until it was dead. This made Lin-E a little puzzled. How did I provoke this guy? Could it be that I accidentally broke into its lair? In the blink of an eye, one man and one ape had rushed thousands of feet through the dense treetops. At this time, the black ape finally slowed down and seemed to have the intention to give up. Lin-E secretly breathed a sigh of relief. This confirmed his previous guess. It seemed that he had really accidentally invaded the opponent's territory. For the jungle spirit beasts with a strong sense of territory, if an outsider like Lin-E broke into their lair, they would not stop until they were dead. However, just as the black ape was about to give up, an enormous black shadow suddenly appeared above the black ape's head without the slightest warning. Taking advantage of the black ape's reaction, the shadow opened its bloody mouth and swallowed it whole. After that, it whistled as it shrank back into the dense canopy of the tree, making it impossible to see its true appearance clearly. Hiss! Lin-E, who had witnessed the whole scene from beginning to end, could not help but gasp. Taking advantage of the huge beast not staring at him, he hurriedly left the scene. After carefully escaping nearly thousands of feet away, Lin-E finally slowed down. Although he was nervous, the corners of his mouth unconsciously raised into a smile. This back mountain was a solid show of strength. After all, he was an expert in the early stage of the Foundation establishment realm. Although the scene just now was shocking and made people's scalps tingle, Lin-E still observed enough information in a hurry. That giant creature was a brightly colored python. Its body was as thick as a bucket. Although it hid its head and tail, Lin-E could infer that its body was at least 10 feet long. In other words, it was at least 30 meters tall. This was a behemoth through and through. More importantly, this multicolored python was able to swallow a heaven-rank middle-stage black ape in one gulp. This meant that its strength was at least above heaven-rank full circle. It was very likely that it was a powerful Foundation establishment stage spiritual beast. Lin-E didn't have the slightest confidence that he would be able to escape unscathed when facing such a ferocious and malevolent Foundation establishment stage spirit beast. It was not impossible for him to lose his life here if he was not careful. Fortunately, the python's prey was the black ape. If it had been him, he might not have been able to dodge that attack. At this moment, thinking back to the warning his senior brother had given him before setting off, Lin-E immediately felt that those words were right. His enemies were not just the other rookies. The back mountain itself was the source of the greatest danger. From the time he got on and off the flying spirit beast until now. In just a few short minutes, he had already encountered 2 powerful spirit beasts. One of them might even be a Foundation establishment stage spirit beast. This kind of thing was simply unimaginable in the outside world. One had to know that this was only the periphery of the back mountain. If it was the inner periphery or the center, what would the scene be like? Not to mention those heaven-rank, full-circle newcomers. Lin Yi felt that even a foundation establishment stage expert like himself would not be able to survive for more than a day. What Lin Yi didn't know was that although there were many powerful and ferocious foundation establishment stage spirit beasts in the periphery of the back mountain, there weren't many to the extent that he could casually bump into them. If there were such Python-level existences everywhere, other heaven-rank full-circle newcomers wouldn't be able to survive at all, let alone gather medicinal herbs. The reason why he encountered so many ferocious fellows as soon as he came down this time was not purely because of bad luck, but because someone behind him had deliberately informed him in order to throw him into the most dangerous area in the periphery and find a way to bury him in the mouths of spirit beasts. In order to inform him, Meng Jueguang even specifically asked Su Lingchong to come forward. After all, with his power, the experts in the back mountain hall wouldn't even pay attention to him, let alone do things for him. But Su Lingchong was different. They had to give him face. Anyway, it was just a small matter in passing. However, for them, it was a small matter, but for Lin Yi, it was a matter of life and death. If he hadn't hidden his foundation establishment stage strength, being thrown into such a place would definitely be a narrow escape from death. After this unique display of power, just now, Lin Yi's subsequent actions were obviously more cautious. However, perhaps it was because of such a super python, there were no other powerful creatures within a radius of a few miles. Even if there were mostly small beasts like the little killer marmot that posed no threat. Lin Yi estimated that even if these small beasts were tied up and sent to the front of the python, it would probably be too lazy to open its mouth. After coming to this conclusion, Lin Yi was a little relieved. Although it was extremely dangerous to move around such a powerful spirit beast, it wasn't without benefits. At least it could reduce a lot of small troubles. And that python had just swallowed a heaven-rank middle-stage black ape. According to the usual habits of snakes, it shouldn't need to eat for a short period of time. This was an innate instinct, and presumably the foundation establishment stage python was no exception. In other words, at least for a period of time, there shouldn't be any other dangers in this area. This was just right. It gave Lin Yi a great opportunity to search for medicinal herbs. Moreover, under normal circumstances, other spirit beasts or wild beasts should not dare to easily step into this territory within a few miles of this giant python. In this case, various medicinal herbs should grow better here than in other places. After making up his mind, Lin Yi jumped down from the top of the tree. After all, medicinal herbs wouldn't grow on trees, except for a few exceptions. Sure enough, after Lin Yi got down to the ground, he immediately had a harvest. This was a light blue flower growing in the grass. At first glance, it was inconspicuous, but if you looked closely, you would find that this flower was completely composed of a petal. Moreover, looking at the arc of the flower, it was very mysterious. It seemed that there were many mysteries of heaven and earth contained in it. The most important thing was that although this flower was small, it was full of spiritual energy. This was the symbolic characteristic of medicinal herbs. Chapter 36:61. As for whether it was a herb or not, as long as he dug it up and placed it in the basket on his back, he would know. The basket would give him points based on the herb's medicinal properties and spiritual energy. After Lin Yi did this, the bright red point bar on the basket increased from 0 to 7. Ordinary herbs were worth 1 point, but this seemingly unremarkable flower was worth 7 points. It was a pretty good start. Lin Yi was happy. Although his goal was to find the heart-devouring exquisite grass, it was not a bad thing to be able to collect as many other herbs as possible. Even if he did not put them in the space in the jade pendant, he could still exchange them for trial points. However, the rest of the process was a little boring. Lin Yi had collected quite a lot of herbs as he'd expected, and in less than an hour, his points on the basket had shot up to 57. However, Lin he still hadn't found the heart-devouring, exquisite grass that he wanted the most. In order to ensure that he could find the heart-devouring, exquisite grass in the trial, he had done a lot of homework. He even went to the back cliff to ask Lu Bianren, the scholar, for advice. Not only did he know the characteristics of the heart-devouring, exquisite grass like the back of his hand, but he also memorized the suitable growing environment for it to ensure that he would not miss it if he came across it. But now he had already walked around for a few miles, but he did not even find the shadow of the heart-devouring, exquisite grass. Not only that, but judging from the dark and damp environment, it did not seem like a place where the heart-devouring, exquisite grass could grow. According to Senior Lu, the heart-devouring, exquisite grass likes the sun and easily grows in dry places with plenty of light. This kind of place is not easy to find in the deep mountains and forests. Lin, he shook his head helplessly. This kind of deep mountains and forests had plenty of rain. In the secular world, it would be like a tropical rainforest with no end in sight. The ground was either dark and damp, and not even the slightest bit of sunlight could pass through. Wanting to find the heart-devouring, exquisite grass in this kind of place was easier said than done, even with Lu Bianren's hint. With Lin Yi's current situation, it was not easy for him to find a place that met the requirements because he did not know where he was at the moment, and there were no landmarks within dozens of miles, so it was useless even if he referred to the map of the Back Mountain periphery issued by the Back Mountain Hall. Anyone who had experience living in the jungle would know that the most terrifying thing in this vast jungle was not the ferocious beasts and poisonous creatures that lurked everywhere, but losing one's way. In this kind of dense forest where even sunlight was difficult to see, once one lost their way, it was very likely that they would end up being devoured by the dense forest. In fact, there were no landmarks nearby. Even an expert in the early stage of foundation establishment like Lin, he found it difficult to accurately grasp his own position. However, he was slightly better than ordinary people. As long as he spent a little effort, he could at least climb to the top of the tree and use the sun to determine his position. Apart from that, his other advantage was that his survivability was far stronger than that of ordinary people. However, that was all. Lin Yi's current mission was not to survive, but to find the heart-devouring, exquisite grass within 3 days. This was very difficult. At least until now, he did not know where the heart-devouring, exquisite grass would grow, nor did he know how far it was from him. It was a pity that Skybolt Pig was in a coma. It would be easy if he was awake. Lenny could not help but sigh. With Skybolt Pig's ability, even if he could not directly help him find the heart-devouring, exquisite grass, it should not be a problem for him to help him find a dry place with sufficient sunlight. After all, treasure hunting was this pig's talent, and treasure hunting was the most basic requirement. It was to sense the environment, to find the heart-devouring, exquisite grass within 3 days. If Lin Yi relied on himself, he only had a 20% chance of success. But with Skybolt Pig's help, he had at least an 80% chance of success. It was a pity that Skybolt Pig had been in a coma ever since he was transported to Heaven Stage Island. Now that it had been more than 20 days, Lin Yi did not know how to wake him up. If it was not for the fact that his vital signs were still stable, Lin Yi would have thought that this fellow had already become a vegetable pig. Now that Skybolt Pig could not be counted on, he could only count on himself. Lin Yi took a deep breath, found a huge tree beside him, and climbed up. Only by standing high could one see far. Climbing to the highest tree nearby, and doing his best to find a suitable place to grow the heart-devouring, exquisite grass, was the last hope he could place. It was a little stupid, but it was much better than blindly searching like a headless fly. Lin Yi was extra careful as he climbed the tree, keeping an eye on his surroundings. After the lesson he learned last time, he knew that the trees weren't as dangerous as the ground. There weren't as many snakes and beasts as there were on the ground, but it was more dangerous. This was because in this kind of dense forest, the stronger the creature, the more likely it was to occupy the large space above, just like the giant python and the black ape. Although the snakes and beasts on the ground were troublesome, they did not pose much of a threat to Lin Yi. However, it was different at the top of the dense treetops. It was possible that there was a powerful spirit beast at the Foundation establishment stage entrenched there. Strictly speaking, the giant tree that he was currently looking for had already left the territory of the giant python, so there was no need to worry about it. However, while he was climbing up, there was no telling if there was a similarly powerful spirit beast that had already set its eyes on him. Although he always felt that there was a powerful creature staring at him from an undetectable dark place. He finally climbed to the top of the treetops without any mishaps. He looked around and had a good view. However, after a while of observation, even someone as determined as he could not help but feel discouraged. No matter which direction he looked in, the scenery was almost exactly the same. It was a continuous treetops. The only difference was that when he looked to the north, apart from the treetops, he could see a bulging mountain in the distance. It was so high that its peak could not be seen, and it pierced straight into the clouds. This was the so-called main body of the back mountain. The back mountain hall was to the south of the back mountain, so he could roughly confirm his position. However, he still had no idea where he should go next. Chapter 3662. He suddenly felt a little awkward. If it really didn't work, he could only choose a random direction to look around. At this moment, there was a muffled clap of thunder in the sky. Then, dark clouds covered the sky, and a fierce wind blew. In the blink of an eye, countless pillars of rain came crashing down. Each pillar was as thick as a thumb, and when it hit his face, he felt a sharp pain. The rainstorm came without warning. He was not familiar with his surroundings to begin with, and the torrential rain had suppressed his visibility and perception to an extremely low level. If he continued to move around outside at this time, it would be no different from courting death. Even with Lin Yi's strength in the early stage of the Foundation establishment realm, he could only choose to find a place to hide from the rain. After all, this was a thunderstorm. It came and went quickly, so it shouldn't take too long. Jumping down from the top of the tree, He originally planned to find a dense canopy to shelter from the rain. However, as he was moving forward, he accidentally caught a glimpse of a tree hole in the wide trunk. After observing for a while and confirming that there were no powerful spirit beasts' auras, he entered in a flash. Compared to the raging storm outside, a dry and comfortable tree hole was an irresistible temptation, and he was no exception. Unexpectedly, the interior of the tree hole was quite spacious. It was empty, about 20 square meters in size. There were no obvious chisel marks, and it seemed to be a naturally formed tree hole. After looking around, he saw a pile of things in the corner. His eyes suddenly narrowed and his heart tightened. That pile of things was actually a pile of bones. There were about 4 or 5 of them, and these were not the bones of wild beasts. They were real human skeletons. In an instant, his hair stood on end. It was not strange for there to be traces of humans in this tree hole. After all, this was the periphery of the back mountain. Every year, there would be many cultivators coming in and out. However, there were human skeletons here, and there were 4 or 5 of them piled up together. This was shocking. Could it be that cultivators killed each other and piled up their corpses here? He could not help but feel puzzled. He carefully scanned the skeletons a few times and found that there was something on every bone. All of them had huge, sharp teeth marks on them. At this point, the answer was obvious. These people did not die at the hands of humans. Instead, they had become food for a powerful spiritual beast. This conclusion made break out in a cold sweat. The reason why these people appeared here was very likely to be like him, coming here to take shelter from the rain, or simply looking for a place to rest. However, in the end, they all became food for a powerful spirit beast. What did this mean? This meant that he had followed in the footsteps of these people. It was very likely that he had been targeted by the powerful spiritual beast that was hiding in the dark. From start to finish, this tree hole was not a safe haven. Instead, it was a living trap, a trap that caused many cultivators to die without a place to be buried. The weak are prey to the strong. These words flashed across Yi's mind. In the world outside the back mountain, There were all kinds of rules and restrictions. Even humans and spirit beasts could coexist peacefully. All those rules were completely useless. There were only two identities here. Either you were the predator or you were the prey. Although he did not know what the spiritual beast looked like, Lin Yi knew that he had become its prey, a prey that had fallen into its trap. Without knowing the exact details of its opponent, if he continued to stay here, he would most likely be a sitting duck. Therefore, Lin Yi made a decision immediately. Of the 36 stratagems, escape was the best. Even if he had been targeted and there was no way for him to escape, he could at least choose another battlefield. There was no need for him to fight on his opponent's home ground. However, just as he was about to leave the tree hole, a voice that he had not heard for a long time rang in his mind. Squeak, 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 squeak. The Skybolt pig had woken up. Lin Yi stopped in his tracks. This voice made him overjoyed. This way, it would be much more reliable for him to find the heart-devouring, exquisite grass. However, the situation was not good. It was not the time to let the Skybolt pig out. He had to wait until he was out of danger. However, before Lin Yi could leave the tree hole, the Skybolt pig began to squeak even more urgently. It was as if something urgent had happened. Lin Yi's heart skipped a beat. For the Skybolt pig to be so anxious, could there be some kind of treasure hidden in the tree hole? After hesitating for a while, Lin Yi finally decided to let the Skybolt pig out. He wanted to see what kind of treasure he could find here. After all, if the Skybolt pig was able to wake up from his coma, the treasure would not be anything ordinary. If he left now, even if Lin Yi wanted to come back later, he might not be able to find this tree hole. It would be a pity if he missed the treasure that was so close to him. Squeak, 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 squeak. After the Skybolt pig came out from the space in the jade pendant, he looked at Lin Yi and pounced toward the pile of bones. You're saying there's treasure in here? Lin Yi was slightly stunned. Out of an instinctive disgust, normal people wouldn't want to take a second look at this pile of bones. Even a powerful early-stage foundation establishment expert like him would be the same. From the start, he wouldn't even want to turn over this pile of bones, let alone think that there would be something underneath. GG, the Skybolt pig nodded. Seeing this, Lin Yi did not hesitate and immediately went forward to examine the pile of bones. As expected, there was a black bag hidden under the bones. It was not big, about the size of a shoebox. When he opened the bag, it was a bag of blood-red gravel. It was faintly emitting an indescribable and strange aura. Lin Yi had never seen anything like this before, so he immediately turned around and asked the Skybolt pig, "What is this?" The Skybolt pig shook his head and used his hoof to dip into some dark tree dust at the corner of the bag. He wrote on the ground, "I don't know what this is, but I was attracted by the aura of this bag. It should be a very rare treasure." Oh, if that's the case, then this is a little interesting. At this critical moment, Lin Yi did not think too much about it and immediately put the bag of items into the space in the jade pendant. If he was right, this bag of items should be the spoils of war from the pile of corpses on the ground. Perhaps it was a treasure that they had painstakingly obtained through countless efforts. In the end, they did not expect to die in this tree hole trap on their way back. Thinking about this, Lin Yi could not help but feel alarmed. If he continued to dawdle here, he might follow in the footsteps of these people. Chapter 3663. A pair of cold, bloodshot eyes like copper bells were currently staring at Lin Yi. Its throat trembled slightly, and it let out a scalp-numbing roar. Its fangs were exposed, and a fishy smell assailed the nostrils. Looking at its appearance, it should be a mountain leopard, but its body was several times larger than an ordinary mountain leopard. Its height alone was close to 3 meters. At this moment, it had just stuck its ferocious head in, and it had already filled up the entrance of the cave. There was only one hole in the entire tree hole. This way, Lin Yi had no way to escape. He was completely caught by this giant mountain leopard. Of course, Lin Yi didn't dare to turn around and use martial arts to break other places. He was also afraid that this monster would sneak attack him. It could be seen that his previous speculation was not wrong at all. This entire tree hole was a living trap. If he was not careful, he had already become prey that was about to enter the other's mouth. After clearly sensing the other's aura, Lin Yi's heart suddenly trembled. Sure enough, this mountain leopard was indeed a powerful spirit beast with the strength of a Foundation establishment stage. In fact, if it wasn't for this level of fierce beast, it wouldn't have been able to block those people from before. After all, those people were able to come to the back mountain. Their strength should at least be at the Foundation establishment stage. Of course, although the possibility of it being a peak heaven stage expert wasn't high, it couldn't be completely ruled out. However, what made Lin Yi slightly happy was that although this giant mountain leopard was a Foundation establishment stage spirit beast, its strength should be at the early stage of Foundation establishment stage. He wasn't completely powerless against it. However, even if everyone was at the early stage of Foundation establishment stage, if they were to really fight, there was still a huge gap between humans and this fierce beast that was born to fight, especially since this was the opponent's home ground. At this moment, facing such a fierce beast, even a guy like Lin Yi, who killed his way up from the secular world, didn't have much confidence in his heart that he could escape unscathed. Taking advantage of the time when the giant mountain leopard was still sizing him up, Lin Yi quietly put the Thunder Pig behind him into the space of the Jade Pendant. After all, this guy was not born to fight, and its strength was too weak. In this kind of situation, if it was casually scratched, it would become cannon fodder. Lin Yi was still counting on it to find the heart-devouring, exquisite grass for him, but he couldn't bear the consequences. Fortunately, this giant mountain leopard seemed to only pay attention to Lin Yi. It didn't even bat an eyelid at a small creature like Skybolt Pig. Lin Yi couldn't help but sigh in his heart. This guy in front of him was probably addicted to eating humans. Roar! The low growls of the giant mountain leopard became more and more intense. Starting from its huge and sinister head, its entire body slowly stretched out. At the same time, incomparably sharp black claws appeared on the soles of his feet. With a light slash, several deep claw marks were left on the soles of his feet. This scene was truly shocking to the eye. One had to know that the wood beneath his feet was no ordinary wood. Lin Yi had felt it when he came in. The wood was extremely sturdy, comparable to hard rock, and the claws could leave such a deep mark. If he wasn't careful and got scratched by the claws, he'd probably die. Wouldn't he be dismembered on the spot? This was the advantage of combat-type spirit beasts. They were born to fight. As a race born to fight, their entire body was a lethal weapon. Compared to them, humans were simply weak and vulnerable. This was also the reason why it was difficult for human experts to contend with combat-type spirit beasts at the same level of strength. Lin Yi looked around. Under the threat of this giant mountain leopard, he couldn't help but think of retreating. Although the hole was blocked by the other party, it wasn't difficult for an expert in the early stage of the Foundation establishment realm like him to break a hole in the tree hole and escape. However, this seemingly safer and wiser idea was immediately extinguished by Lin Yi's own rationality. This was different from the giant python he encountered at the beginning. Although that giant python's strength was not inferior to this giant mountain leopard, its target was the black ape. It didn't have any thoughts about Lin Yi, so Lin Yi could calmly escape. In reality, if the giant python wanted to attack him, Lin Yi was still confident that he could escape. After all, he had the gale-chasing lightning boots and the butterfly subtle steps. He was confident that he would not lose to the giant python in terms of speed. However, the giant mountain leopard in front of him was different. Even if he thought with his toes, he knew that this fellow was definitely much faster than the giant python. Especially in such a dense jungle, it would not be an exaggeration to say that it was the king of speed. Therefore, even with the speed bonus of the gale-chasing lightning boots and the butterfly subtle steps, Lin Yi still dared not compete with the other party in speed. After all, firstly, Yangming might not be faster than the giant mountain leopard. Secondly, it was raining cats and dogs outside, hence his visibility and perception were suppressed to an extremely low level. If he was not careful, he might barge into another powerful spirit beast territory. If another troublesome, ferocious creature appeared, he would be in danger. Compared to running away, turning around, and fighting at this moment might seem stupid, but it was a more reliable choice. Yes, this was the opponent's home ground. Yes, this was a trap set by the opponent, and it was unavoidable. However, for Lin Yi, it was not that he had no advantage at all. The biggest advantage he could rely on at the moment was this tree hole. For humans, this tree hole was big and spacious enough, but for a ferocious beast that was nearly 3 meters tall and more than 2 meters long, it seemed too narrow. Most of the time, a strong and huge beast body could be a great advantage, but in some situations, it was also a disadvantage. Perhaps this giant mountain leopard was fast and even agile outside, but in this tree hole, Lin Yi bet that it was definitely not as agile as he thought. In a battle between masters, often a subtle flaw could determine the outcome. At this moment, although this little advantage might not be able to directly kill the giant mountain leopard, there was no doubt that it gave Lin Yi a lot of space to play. He hadn't encountered this feeling of dying at any time for a long time. He could see the infinite danger from the pair of cold and bloody eyes. But Lin Yi was ready to take a gamble. Roar dash! The giant mountain leopard suddenly pounced forward, and the killing game began. In such a narrow tree hole, especially on such a rainy day, the giant mountain leopard moved a little, and the extremely strong stench from its body had already hit the nose, choking people to breathe. This fella, even the smell on its body could kill people. Chapter 36-64. So fast. Even though Lin Yi had already overestimated his opponent's speed, he realized at this moment that he had still underestimated his opponent. However, this also proved that his choice to face it head-on was correct. Based on his opponent's speed, if he wanted to run, he really had no chance of winning. Lin Yi hurriedly leaned to the side and used all his strength to barely avoid it. However, the clothes on his chest were still torn by the strong wind brought by the claws. Roar! The fact that Lin Yi was able to avoid this sudden sure-kill attack was obviously out of the giant mountain leopard's expectation. According to its past experience, this attack should have been in the bag against an expert in the early stage of the foundational level. The pile of bones in the corner was proof. However, the giant mountain leopard's movements did not stop at all. When one claw missed, another claw immediately followed. Compared to the previous claw, it was faster and more powerful. In a hurry, Lin Yi could not find a chance to counterattack. He was forced to retreat again. After all, even if he was confident in his strength, he would not rashly fight against such a powerful and ferocious beast. He clearly knew that his opponent was dangerous. If he attacked without understanding the situation, it would not be called courage, it would be called stupidity. However, this claw was not as easy as the first one. As Lin Yi retreated, it was also chasing. Even if Lin Yi used the butterfly micro steps to maximize his speed and even change directions, it still chased after him. This was no longer a simple beast's instinctive attack. It was a real high-level martial art. This kind of martial art was so profound that human experts could not master it, no matter how fast you were or how agile you were. Once you were locked on by it, there was no way to get rid of it. Before this, Lin Yi still wanted to rely on his agility to bully this huge beast, but when the opponent used its second claw, everything became a bubble. No matter what, he could not get rid of it. What was the use of agility? Lin Yi could not help but sigh in his heart. As expected, there was not a single battle-type spirit beast in the early stage of the foundational level that was easy to deal with. In the end, this claw ended with Lin Yi's left arm being wounded. 3 bone-deep wounds were shocking. Blood continued to flow. This was the result of Lin Yi using the cave wall behind him as cover. If the giant panther had not slowed down a little due to some misgivings, this claw would not have just left 3 wounds. Perhaps even Lin Yi's entire left arm would have been torn off. However, the scene just now also gave Lin Yi some inspiration. Although this vicious creature's movements were full of killing power, it was very careful to control its own strength. It was unwilling to release even the slightest bit of wind, as if it was afraid of destroying the tree hole. It was especially obvious when it almost scratched the wall. In reality, no matter how hard the walls of the tree hole were, the man and the beast were both in the early stage of the Foundation establishment realm. If the two of them were to really fight, not to mention this small tree hole, even the entire tree would be blasted into pieces. The reason why these experts died here before was because they couldn't even withstand the first claw and were instantly killed. After discovering this, Lenny could not help but snicker in his heart. Could it be that this fellow still wanted to rely on this tree hole trap to continue tricking people? It's thinking quite a lot. After all, a powerful spirit beast in an early stage of the Foundation establishment realm was not an ordinary beast. Its intelligence did not lose to humans in the slightest. Its actions were also far from being as straightforward as ordinary beasts. Every action had its own special purpose. In fact, legend has it that some spirit beasts could take human form after stepping into the Heaven's Path. However, the scope of the Heaven's Path was too wide. Who knew if the early stage of the Foundation establishment realm could do it? However, thinking too much during the process of battle might not be a good thing. However, just as Lin, he was thinking about how to use this point to make a big fuss. Although the giant panther's 2 claws missed, normally speaking, it should have revealed a flaw in its moves. However, it did not. Not only did it not exhaust its strength, but its attacks became even more ferocious. With 2 claws in the air, the giant panther immediately turned around. Lin, he was slightly surprised. Immediately after, he saw the slender and powerful tail on its buttocks sweeping towards him with a whistling sound. And this was not an ordinary tail sweep. The speed of the panther's tail was so fast that it was hard to see with the naked eye. 1 turned into 3, 3 turned into 9, turning into layers of tail shadows that pounced towards him. This fellow was really fierce. According to Lin Yi's estimation, the power of this phantom tail was already comparable to his Frenzy 8 trigrams Palm's 21st style. If he was swept by it again, even if it was just a slight graze like before, it would be hard for him to not die. The giant panther was full of confidence. This was a trump card. An early stage of the Foundation establishment realm had no chance of surviving this move. Even a slightly stronger early stage of the Foundation establishment realm expert would be seriously injured, if not killed, by this trump card. Little did it know that the more powerful the trump card, the more unexpected fatal flaws would appear at certain times. Although this giant panther already had intelligence no less than a human's, its thinking was still the same as a normal person's. It had a fatal blind spot. Facing the layers of tail shadows, Lin, he did not choose to dodge like before. Instead, he directly soared into the air. The giant panther's eyes suddenly revealed a look of contempt. To choose to soar into the air in front of its trump card, this fella simply did not want to die fast enough. However, in the next moment, it suddenly felt that something was wrong. Although Lin, he jumped into the air, his whole body was stuck to the cave wall behind him. If its tail swept over, although it could kill Lin E, it would inevitably destroy the tree cave at the same time. Thus, the giant panther subconsciously hesitated, and this gave Lin E a chance to counterattack. Butterfly micro-steps stepped on the cave wall behind him, and the speed of his movement technique was instantly pushed to the extreme. In the blink of an eye, Lin E had already leaped over the layers of tail shadows and directly closed in on top of the panther's head. Then, the 21st style of the Frenzy 8 trigrams Palm, and with the attack bonus of the Essence Necklace, the firepower was unleashed. Boom! The entire giant tree trembled, and countless branches and leaves fell from the outside, startling a group of harmless weak birds. Phew! Looking at the giant panther that fell to the ground and could not move, Lin, he let out a sigh of relief. From the beginning, when the panther blocked the cave entrance, he had been in extreme danger, and the dangerous Palm, just now, was even more of a struggle for life in the midst of death. If it was not for the fact that he noticed the opponent's tiny flaw in the process, even if Lin, he could eventually kill this giant panther, Both sides would definitely be injured, and he would need to recover for a period of time. Chapter 3665. This was his strongest killing move. If this move still couldn't kill this ferocious creature, then he really could only kneel and beg this ghostly thing. Fortunately, although this giant mountain leopard was fierce, in the end it couldn't withstand the 21st move of the wildfire 8 trigrams palm. Lin, he finally had the last laugh. At this moment, it was still raining cats and dogs outside, and they couldn't leave for a while. Lin, he hid in the tree hole and entered the space in the jade pendant to recover his true chi and heal his injuries. But before entering the space, he glanced at the mountain leopard's corpse on the ground, and with a thought, he stored it together with the corpse. After entering the space, the ghostly thing's voice rang out next to him with a hint of surprise. Nine-tailed cloud leopard? You can even kill this thing? You're not bad, kid. Senior Ghost, this fellow is called a nine-tailed cloud leopard. Lin, he was slightly taken aback, but when he thought back to the killing move he had just used, the name was quite appropriate. That's right. From the looks of it, it should be an adult, and its strength is at least at the early foundation establishment stage. It's a famous killer in the jungle, and even the world of spirit beasts, it's an extremely sinister and cunning fellow. It's rare for someone with your strength to be able to kill it in the jungle. The ghostly thing's voice carried a rare trace of admiration. Hee, Senior Ghost, you flatter me. I was just lucky. Lin, he smiled bitterly and shook his head. Although he had ultimately relied on his strength to be able to kill the nine-tailed cloud leopard, luck at the last moment was also crucial. If the nine-tailed cloud leopard hadn't subconsciously hesitated for a moment, it would have been hard to say who would have won. Of course, this bit of luck was also obtained through intelligence. If Lin, he hadn't noticed its flaw, which couldn't even be considered a flaw, he wouldn't have had the chance to gamble on this bit of luck. No need to be humble. Luck is also a part of strength, the ghostly thing said lightly. Lin, he looked at it with some surprise. From its tone, there seemed to be a story behind it. To be honest, the ghostly thing had been in the space in the jade pendant for so long, but he still didn't know where it came from. He just had a faint feeling that it had something to do with Heaven Island. However, although this doubt had existed in his heart for a long time, Lin, he was too embarrassed to ask since the ghost itself didn't want to say it. He could only continue to suppress it. Looking at the bag of blood-red gravel that had just been collected, Lin, he asked the ghostly thing while healing his injuries and restoring his true chi. Senior Ghost, do you know what these things are? The ghostly thing sized him up for a while. I've never seen it before. It looks like some kind of material, but I don't know what it's used for. You don't even know what a ghost is? Lin could not help but be stunned. According to the ghost's previous display of knowledge, there should be nothing that it did not know, but this pile of blood-red gravel was something that even he could not explain. Could it be an extremely rare material? He could only keep this question to himself for now and see if he could find a way to find out its specific name and use in the future. After a short while, Lin, he finished recuperating. He then brought the skybolt pig out of the jade space. After all, his priority was to find the heart-devouring exquisite grass. He didn't have much time to waste. When he came out of the jade space, it was already sunny after the rain. It was a good time to move, so Lin, he immediately brought the skybolt pig down to the ground. The rest was naturally left to the skybolt pig. Because he had never seen the heart-devouring exquisite grass before, even a natural-born treasure hunter like the skybolt pig could not directly find the heart-devouring exquisite grass. He could only follow Lin Yi's request to find a suitable place for the heart-devouring exquisite grass to grow. There were two conditions: sufficient light and dry. It was a very simple condition, but it was not easy to find such a piece of land in the outer area of the mountain that was like a tropical rainforest. However, to the skybolt pig, this request was completely a piece of cake. Rather than saying that his talent was treasure hunting, it was more accurate to say that he was completely aware of the surrounding environment. His nose was far more accurate than the most sophisticated detector in the mortal world. As long as he was willing, He could grasp the slightest subtle change in the surrounding environment without missing a single point. And this range could even reach a radius of a few miles. With this kind of equipment, it was naturally easy for the Skybolt pig to find a place that met Lin Yi's requirements. Gee. The Skybolt pig happily squealed twice when he saw the light of day again. All right, Senior Ghost, when I was in the mortal world, I heard that when spiritual beasts reach heaven rank, they would be able to speak the human language. But my Skybolt pig seems to still be squeaking? Since there is no danger, Lin Yi asked curiously. Some spiritual beasts are like this, but some spiritual beasts are not. Don't use your knowledge of spiritual beasts in the mortal world as an authority. The ghost said faintly, in a mortal world, the spiritual beasts you see are all low-level spiritual beasts. They have gone through a long period of evolution, so when they reach heaven rank, they can basically speak. However, your little fella's strength was forcefully increased by you. It is not the time for it to speak, so naturally it cannot speak. This is like a child speaking. There is a gradual process. It is not something that can be achieved just by increasing your strength. In addition, on this heaven rank island, some spiritual beasts are born with the strength of heaven rank. How can it speak? I see. Lin Yi was enlightened. The ghost should be an authority in this area. So Lin Yi was very convinced. In the process of bringing Lin Yi to potential destinations, the Skybolt pig did not forget its old profession. One man and one pig, they looted all kinds of spiritual herbs along the way. As a result, the points displayed on Lin Yi's basket directly jumped to a high of 738. According to the common sense of previous trials, the final points of similar trials for newcomers were generally around 500 points. But now, less than a day had passed, and Lin Yi had already exceeded the requirements of the mission. Under the guidance of the Skybolt pig, Lin Yi trekked in the dense forest for an entire day. It was only when the sun was about to set that they finally reached the destination that met his requirements, a large canyon. This canyon was more than 10 feet wide, and it was marked on the map provided by the back mountain hall. Originally, a canyon was very difficult to associate with the words dry, but in the outer area of the back mountain, it was already a rare place that met these two conditions. Chapter 3666. In a place like this, due to the lack of tree canopies, there was plenty of light. However, if one were to consider the fact that it was dry, then the only light source would be the cliffs on both sides. Lin Yi looked around with rapt attention. However, all he saw was that the cliffs on both sides were barren, and there was no sign of the heart-devouring exquisite grass. Not only that, even the most common plants were rare. In the secular world, in a place like this where even birds wouldn't poop, it was already a miracle for anything to grow. Can the heart-devouring exquisite grass grow in a place like this? Lin Yi's heart suddenly sank. To be able to find such a place that barely met the requirements was already not easy. If he couldn't find it here, even if he had the help of the Skybolt pig, he wouldn't have to worry about not being able to find the next potential destination. But it would be hard to say how long it would take. Now that the first day was almost over and the sky was completely dark, no matter how skilled and courageous Lin Yi was, he wouldn't dare to act rashly in a place like this where he could easily bump into a Foundation establishment stage spirit beast. If he were to include the time needed to return, there wouldn't be much time left for him to find the heart-devouring exquisite grass. Now, the problem left for Lin Yi was whether he should continue to search on the cliffs of the Grand Canyon, where it was difficult to grow any spirit herbs, or save time to quickly change locations and head to the next place that met the requirements. Just as Lin Yi was weighing his options, he suddenly heard the excited cries of the Skybolt pig. Could it be that there was a discovery? Lin Yi was overjoyed and quickly ran over. Gee. Seeing that Lin Yi was coming over, the Skybolt pig used its front paw to point at the cliff below Lin Yi's feet. Lin Yi looked in the direction it was pointing at and discovered that about 150 feet away from his feet, there was a tree trunk that grew out of a crack in the cliff. Even though it couldn't be compared to the towering trees on the ground, it was still a rare sight in this barren cliff. However, in the end, it was just a tree, and not the heart-devouring, exquisite grass that he needed. Just as Lin, he was feeling a little disappointed, the skybolt pig was still chirping nonstop. It even couldn't wait to ride on the ground, look carefully at the bottom right of the tree. Lin, he was stunned. He had told Skybolt Pig about the characteristics of the heart-devouring, exquisite grass, so that it would be easier for him to find his target. Could it be that there really was a heart-devouring, exquisite grass? Following Skybolt Pig's instructions, Lin E carefully observed for a while, and after a while, his eyes suddenly lit up. On the lower right side of the tree, in the gap that was blocked by the leaves and branches, a trace of a spiritual herb could be seen. Moreover, it was undoubtedly the heart-devouring, exquisite grass. Sure enough, the heavens did not disappoint those who persevere. Lin heaved a sigh of relief. As long as he could find the heart-devouring, exquisite grass, then his mission this time would be considered a success, and he wouldn't have come here in vain. However, even though he had found the heart-devouring, exquisite grass, how to harvest it was another problem. Although Lin E was now an early-stage foundation-building expert, the key problem was that he couldn't fly. The heart-devouring, exquisite grass was 150 feet below him, and the cliff was abnormally smooth. Looking down, he couldn't even find a foothold. Climbing down like this was simply wishful thinking. Even if he had the guts to jump down directly, the tree below might not be so sturdy. Standing on top of it probably wouldn't be a problem. But if he had a strong impact, the result would be unimaginable, and he would definitely make a decision immediately. It was a pity that he didn't bring a rope. Lin E sighed regretfully. If he had prepared a rope in the space in the jade pendant, he only needed to use the rope as a foothold, and with his strength, he could go up and down 10 times without a problem. Looks like I can only use the materials here to weave my own rope. Lin E looked around. There were many vines hanging on the giant tree not far behind him, and they looked quite sturdy. Using these things to weave a rope should not be a problem. Since the sky wasn't dark yet, Lin E started working immediately. Skybolt Pig ran around to help as well, and after half an incense stick's time, a 20-feet-long vine rope was formed. Lin E tested it a little, and it was quite sturdy. He tied one end of the vine rope to the nearest giant tree, and Lin immediately grabbed the vine rope with one hand. He stepped on the cliff with both feet and swung down lightly. In the blink of an eye, the heart-devouring, exquisite grass was already in front of him. After wrapping the vine rope around his waist twice, Lin immediately landed on the protruding branch and looked down. The situation below made him even more overjoyed. The characteristics were all consistent, and there was no doubt that this was the real heart-devouring, exquisite grass. However, what made Lin E regretful was that there was only one heart-devouring, exquisite grass here. The heart-devouring, exquisite grass was a necessary ingredient for refining the foundation-building pill, and it was an extremely rare and precious herb. It could not even be found in the market, and ordinary people would not even have seen it, let alone possess it. Think about it. Even in the back mountain, where treasures of heaven and earth were everywhere, and even with the help of an expert treasure hunting spirit beast like the Skybolt Pig, Lin E still spent a lot of effort to find it. This kind of heart-devouring, exquisite grass would be worth at least a few tens of spiritual jades. If he met someone who knew the trade and needed it, even if he offered 100 spiritual jades, there would still be people who would buy it. Therefore, to be able to find one heart-devouring, exquisite grass was already a great thing. Lin, he was not the kind of person who would not be satisfied. At the current stage, he had a foundation-building pill, and together with the foundation-building barrier-breaking pill, he could already meet the requirements for his next cultivation. When the conditions were right, success would come naturally, and everything would be smooth sailing. As for the peak of the early stage of the foundation-building realm, that would require other opportunities. Lin E also did not expect to be able to get 8 or 10 ingredients for the foundation-building pill in one trial. That was not realistic at all. Lin E, who had long cultivated the mentality that it was not easy to level up in the secular world, was still very easily satisfied. He carefully bent down and stretched out his hand to pluck the heart-devouring exquisite grass. However, just as his fingertips were about to touch it, a soul-stirring long whistle suddenly came from above his head. Then, a strong gust of wind blew, causing the extended branch under his feet to shake crazily, and Lenny himself was on the verge of falling. Fortunately, he still had 2 coils of vine rope tied around his body. Otherwise, this sudden gust of wind would have caused Lenny to lose his footing and fall down. Falling half to death would be considered a light punishment. If he was washed away by the rapid river, it would be difficult to find this place to pluck the heart-devouring exquisite grass again. Chapter 36-67. The intensity of the battle this time was even greater than when the cloud-piercing nine-tailed panther had trapped them in the tree hole. Fuck, what's going on? He suddenly had an ominous feeling. Then, he felt the sky darken, and he was shrouded in a huge shadow. Looking up, he saw a giant eagle circling in the air about 5 to 6 feet above the canyon. Its wingspan was more than 5 feet. In the secular world, it was 16 meters long. Appearing in the sky above the canyon, it gave Lenny the feeling that it could cover the sky and cover the earth. No matter how he thought about it, a ferocious bird of this size was definitely not simple. Its claws were like golden hooks, and its beak was like a blood diamond. Under the reflection of the setting sun, it was cold and intimidating. With just a cursory glance, Lenny could tell that this giant eagle was at least a Foundation establishment spirit beast. Moreover, its strength seemed to be at least 2 levels higher than the 9-tailed cloud leopard that he had blasted to death. In other words, this fellow was at least a mid-stage Foundation establishment spirit beast. Compared to it, the flying spirit beasts in the rear mountain hall were as tame as quails. Moreover, their strength was far less exaggerated. Lenny had no doubt that if those flying spirit beasts had met this fellow in the sky, they would have all been killed in minutes. Faced with such a ferocious bird, Lenny did not have the slightest bit of confidence to contend against it. The only thing he was glad about was that before he came down, he had put the skybolt pig into the space in the jade pendant in advance, instead of letting the pig keep a lookout for him from above. If the skybolt pig was really up there, forget about keeping a lookout or anything, he would have directly become a snack for this ferocious bird. However, now that the skybolt pig was fine, the one in danger was Lenny himself. The eagle's eyes were as sharp as a ghost's, and it had clearly locked on a Lenny. After all, a living person like Lenny had appeared on the cliff. This target was too obvious. Fuck, how were they supposed to play? Lenny's heart skipped a beat as he watched the giant eagle hover in the air for a while before swooping down in his direction. Previously, he still had the confidence to deal with an early-stage Foundation establishment realm spirit beast like the 9-tailed cloud leopard. However, the one above him was at least a mid-stage Foundation establishment realm spirit beast. If he were to really fight it, he would probably be killed in a single move. More importantly, he was able to stand firmly on the branch thanks to the 2 coils of vines around his waist. Under such circumstances, not to mention a middle-stage Foundation establishment stage giant condor, even if an early-stage Foundation establishment stage spirit beast came, Lenny might not be able to handle it. However, no matter what Lenny thought, the giant eagle above him was prepared to treat him as its dinner today. Although Lenny's body was a little small compared to its huge body, the flesh and blood of human cultivators had always been delicious. Moreover, the amount of spiritual energy it contained was far above that of other spirit beasts. It was a great supplement that could only be found by chance. It folded its wings. The giant eagle swooped down towards Lenny. In an instant, it had already crossed a distance of tens of feet and appeared above Lenny's head. The golden claws under its abdomen clawed at him fiercely. In an instant, it produced a great power that was far above all the divine weapons that Lenny had seen before. Bang! In a hurry, Lenny had a strong back and did not hesitate to pay the price of injury. He forcefully stuck himself to the cliff. Although this limited his movements, he could at least fight back. It was better than being captured by the eagle without a stable footing. At the same time, Lin-Yi clenched his fist, and with his back against the cliff, he blasted out the 22 forms of the frenzied fire fist. The fiery fist intent instantly met the giant eagle's golden claws. The 22 forms of the frenzied fire fist was Lin-Yi's second most powerful move, apart from the 21 forms of the frenzied fire 8 trigrams palm. Although it was slightly inferior to the 21 forms of the frenzied fire 8 trigrams palm, its advantage was that it would not exhaust the vital energy in his body in one move. On this kind of cliff, where there was neither the sky nor the ground, he had to leave some vital energy to protect himself. Otherwise, the opponent would not need to expend so much effort. With the 21 forms of the frenzied fire 8 trigrams palm, not to mention what it could do to the giant eagle, he would directly disarm and surrender, or simply fall down. Whether he lived or died was purely up to the will of the heavens. The fist intent of the 22 forms of the frenzied fire fist was like a volcano that had been silent for many years suddenly erupting. Not only was it powerful, but it was also continuous. If Lin-Yi was facing an ordinary early-stage foundation establishment expert, this punch alone would be enough to injure the other party. However, the problem was that he was facing a giant eagle that was at least in the middle stage of the foundation establishment realm. Although the 22 forms of the frenzied fire fist were overbearing enough to ordinary early-stage foundation establishment experts, it was far from enough to deal with the natural overlord of the sky in front of him. Originally, Lin-Yi did not have high expectations for this punch of his, but purely out of the pride of a cultivator, he did not want to be captured without putting up a fight. However, to his surprise, in the face of his 22 forms of the frenzied fire fist, this seemingly arrogant, vicious bird actually chose to retreat. What's going on? Could it be that this fellow is just a bluff? Lin-Yi could not help but feel surprised. When one's strength reached the level of the foundation establishment realm, almost all spiritual beasts' intelligence was no different from that of humans, so it was not strange for them to have all kinds of human-like thoughts. However, it was easier to change mountains and rivers than to change one's nature. According to common sense, no matter how strong these spiritual beasts were, they would not change their brave and aggressive nature. This was especially true for a battle-type spiritual beast like the giant eagle that was born to kill. If this giant eagle was really incomparably strong, like what Lin-Yi speculated, it should have the strength of a middle-stage foundation establishment realm or above. Facing this 22 forms of the frenzied fire fist, it should not have chosen a dodge, but instead, it should have directly crushed him with its claws. However, no matter what, this giant eagle did choose to retreat in the face of the 22 forms of the frenzied fire fist. However, immediately after, it fiercely flapped its wings towards Lin-Yi. Whoosh! At such a close distance, being fiercely flapped by a pair of wings that had a wingspan of 15 feet, what kind of feeling was that? He did not know how other people would feel, but Lin-Yi felt that he was about to die. Within the wind brought up by the giant eagle's wings, there was also an indescribable force. When it smashed onto his body, it had a force of several tons, causing Lin-Yi's 5 viscera and 6 bowels to begin to shift as if they were being torn apart. Chapter 3668. Even if he was not torn apart by the astral wind, Lin-Yi was still in a precarious situation. The rock behind him, which he used as an anchor, was torn apart by the astral wind. Losing his footing, Lin-Yi lost his footing and fell. Fortunately, he still had 2 coils of rattan rope tied around his body. This was a life-saving rope. However, Lin-Yi suddenly saw a trace of human-like mockery in the giant eagle's ghostly eyes. Its blood diamond-like beak opened slightly, and a visible force easily cut the rattan rope through the air. Fuck! Lin-Yi couldn't help but curse. No wonder it chose to retreat when facing his 22 frenzied fiery fist. It turned out that this ferocious bird didn't treat him as an opponent from the beginning to the end, but was teasing him. This situation was like a cat catching a mouse. First, the cat had to toy with the mouse enough before it was willing to kill it. Lenny never thought that he, a dignified early-stage foundation establishment expert, would have such a tragic day. What was even more tragic was that when a mouse was teased by a cat, it could at least escape 2 steps. But now, he didn't even have the slightest chance to dodge. At the critical moment when the rattan rope broke, Lenny reached out and grabbed the swaying branch. At this moment, the heart-devouring, exquisite grass was right under his eyes, but he didn't even have the chance to reach out and grab it. At this moment, Lenny didn't have the slightest chance to fight back. Like a mouse, he had been forced to the last corner. No matter which direction he ran in, he would only be pulled back by the cat's claws and bitten to death. Besides the mockery, Lenny finally saw a cruel killing intent in the pair of eagle eyes. It was obvious that this overlord-level ferocious bird had played enough. At this moment, the ghostly voice suddenly sounded in Lin Yi's mind. "Kid, you've been forced to this point. Don't tell me you still want to hold on by yourself. Are you really not afraid of death? With your strength, it's not shameful to lose to the ghost-eyed golden eagle in this kind of place." Ghost-eyed golden eagle? Lin was taken aback for a moment, but then he saw the vicious bird above him open its beak wide, and a majestic Zhun Qi rapidly condensed. For a moment, a violent wind blew, and sand and stones flew everywhere. This guy was really prepared to kill him. Compared to this kind of power, Lin Yi's 22 styles of frenzy fist just now were simply unable to withstand a single blow. It was completely not enough. Lin Yi believed that once the frightening energy in its mouth was released, it would definitely be able to withstand it. He had absolutely no chance of escaping. "Little fellow, have you had enough?" At this time, a cloud of black fog suddenly floated out from the space of the jade pendant. The ghostly thing appeared and indifferently said to the ghost-eyed golden eagle. After seeing the ball of black mist, the ghost-eyed golden eagle's aura obviously stopped. After being stunned for a moment, it suddenly retracted its wings in fear and trepidation, and the condensed, genuine qi in its mouth quickly dissipated. Then, it spoke in human language. "This little beast greets Senior. I didn't know Senior was here and offended you. Please forgive me." When one's strength reached the middle stage of the Foundation establishment realm, it was very normal for one to be able to speak the human language. It was not surprising at all. The reason why it did not speak to Lin Yi before was very simple. In its eyes, Lin Yi was just a small prey. As a predator, how could it have feelings for its prey? Since you know that this old man is here, then why don't you hurry up and scram? Although it was still a spiritual communication, but at this moment, from the aura of the ghostly thing, Lin Yi felt an unprecedented majesty. To be precise, this was the aura that only the legendary upper echelons could possess. Yes. The ghost-eyed golden eagle looked at Lin Yi with fear and trepidation, and then suddenly rose into the sky and quickly left. From its departing figure, Lin Yi could even clearly feel an unconcealable shock and fear, casually scaring away the insufferably powerful ghost-eyed golden eagle. This seemingly familiar scene immediately reminded Lin Yi of the time when he was facing the dragon of 5 evils. The ghostly thing had done the same thing. After scaring away the ghost-eyed golden eagle, the ghostly thing quickly returned to the space of the jade pendant. Lin Yi hurriedly said gratefully, "Thank you very much, Senior Ghost, for helping me out. I really can't thank you enough." The ghostly thing chuckled. "Now you know how to be grateful. Why were you so stubborn just now and didn't ask for help from this old man? I thought that you were already capable enough to deal with an existence like the ghost-eyed golden eagle. It turns out that you're just a dead duck with a stubborn mouth. You're purely holding on." Hearing this, Lenny could not help but say embarrassedly, "I was in a hurry just now and didn't think about it." These words were somewhat insincere. With Lin Yi's memory, of course, he remembered the ghostly thing's ability. He knew that this mysterious senior had a special way of dealing with this kind of spirit beast. But the problem was that he had never encountered a spirit beast in the Foundation establishment stage before. What if the ghostly thing's ability was useless, and its primordial spirit was injured by the spirit beast after it came out? Wouldn't that be terrible? Lin Yi's little thoughts could not escape the ghostly thing's eyes. It chuckled and said, "Actually, when you encountered the nine-tailed, cloud-piercing leopard, this old man wanted to help you. But you kid are pretty awesome." Without saying a word, you relied on your early Foundation establishment stage strength to take care of that guy. You've really broadened this old man's horizons. After a pause, the ghostly thing continued. But if you can even deal with the ghost-eyed golden eagle, then this old man will really have to find a chance to slice you up for research. Or I might even suspect that you've been possessed by a powerful primordial spirit. Fortunately, it's not as exaggerated as I imagined. Slice him up for research, and possessed by a powerful primordial spirit? Cold sweat immediately slid down Lin Yi's forehead. This ghostly senior thought quite a lot. Senior Ghost, you've overestimated me. This ghost-eyed golden eagle is so ferocious. How could I possibly be its opponent? From beginning to end, I haven't even touched a single strand of its hair. Instead, I've been toyed with by it. Lin Yi laughed bitterly and gloomily. Then he asked doubtfully, "Speaking of which, forgive me for being curious. Senior Ghost, what is your background? Even a powerful existence like the ghost-eyed golden eagle is so afraid of you?" It was more than afraid. Although the ghost-eyed golden eagle had been forcefully maintaining its imposing manner, after the ghostly thing appeared, Lin Yi clearly felt that all the muscles in its body had stiffened. Even the flapping of its wings was very difficult. If it was not careful, it might directly fall down. Judging from all the signs, this was completely an instinctive trembling from the bottom of its heart. It did not seem like some kind of special ability. The cultivation world had always been a place where the weak were prey to the strong. Now that the ghostly thing was only a primordial spirit, it could make the ghost-eyed golden eagle, a ferocious bird of the sky, tremble with fear. Then, when it was at its peak, how powerful was it? Chapter 3669. Okay. Lin, he was delighted. He had been curious about the origin of this ghost thing for a long time. Today, he could finally uncover the truth. But before that, the most important matter for him at this moment was naturally to collect the heart-devouring, exquisite grass that was right in front of him. To be honest, after experiencing the powerful gale of the ghost-eyed golden eagle, the heart-devouring, exquisite grass was still able to stay here intact. This really made Lin Yi very surprised and glad. If the heart-devouring, exquisite grass had been blown away along with the rocks, then he would really not be able to find a grave even if he cried. With one hand grabbing the tree trunk to stabilize his body, the other hand swiftly collected all the heart-devouring, exquisite grass into his bag. The remaining task was how to return to the ground. The vine rope had been broken by the ghost-eyed golden eagle, but this did not prevent Lin Yi from climbing up. Once a human animal was forced into a desperate situation, they could do anything, not to mention that Lin Yi was an expert in the early stage of Foundation establishment. The stone wall was very steep, but it didn't matter. The stone wall was very smooth, but it also didn't matter. Using the remaining true chi in his body, a punch smashed a deep hole in the cliff, and Lin Yi easily found a point of leverage. One step up, one punch, one step up, and one more punch, leaving a trail of craters in the ground. Just like that, Lin Yi climbed back up to the surface. Entering the space of the jade pendant, while recovering his true chi, Lin Yi said to Gue Dongshi, "Senior Ghost, can you say it now?" The ghost thing did not answer, but asked, "You should have guessed this old man's origin, right? Tell me first." Lin Yi was stunned, and then replied, "According to my speculation, Senior Ghost should be a native of Heavenly Stage Island and should be an extraordinary person. I wonder if this speculation is reliable." The ghost thing smiled non-committally and said, "Your speculation is half right and half wrong. This old man is indeed born on Heavenly Stage Island. This is true, but when did this old man say that I am a human?" Huh? Lin, he was dumbfounded. After a long while, he said, You're not a human? Look at me now. Which part of me looks like a human? The ghostly thing chuckled. That's true, but aren't you in the primordial spirit state? It's normal that you don't look like a human. Lin, he pursed his lips speechlessly. When he first encountered the ghostly thing, he did not treat it as a human, but as a ghost. However, even if it was a ghost, the first impression was that it was a ghost that a person had turned into after death. Who would have thought that this guy wasn't a human when he was alive? Then, is your original form a spirit beast? Lin, he asked cautiously. Since the other party was not a human, then it must be a spirit beast. Apart from that, he had never heard of any other creatures with spiritual intelligence comparable to that of humans. That's right, this old man is indeed a spirit beast. But as for what this old man's true form is, you don't have to ask. You'll find out when the time comes. The ghostly thing paused, then said, You've been in the Welcome Pavilion for a long time. You should have heard of the Spirit Beast clan, right? It really was a spirit beast. Lin, he suddenly remembered that when he was in the secular world, the puppet clone that the ghostly thing released, Xiao Yi, could not use martial arts. At that time, the ghostly thing said that Xiao Yi's physique was not suitable for using martial arts. At that time, Lin, he was quite puzzled. However, now that he thought about it, the ghostly thing was a spirit beast, just like the purple electric beast of wind and thunder. Perhaps it was good at lightning or external martial arts. It would be strange if Xiao Yi's puppet could use it. Lin, he nodded and said, In my spare time, I heard Senior Brother Liu and Senior Brother Ku mention it. It is said that on the south island of Heaven Stage Island, a large number of high-level spirit beasts have gathered. Each of them is extremely powerful, and they have formed a powerful force called the Spirit Beast Clan. That's right. Do you know how the Spirit Beast Clan came to be? You should know that in the beginning, all the spirit beasts, no matter how powerful they were on their own. Just like what you saw outside the back mountain. They killed each other. They never joined forces, let alone formed a huge force. The ghostly thing said with a sigh. I'm all ears. Lin, he pricked up his ears. This was a great opportunity to learn about the forces of Heaven Stage Island. It might be useful in the future, so he naturally had to remember it. The formation of the Spirit Beast clan originated from Spirit Beast, the most powerful spirit beast in history. We call it the King of Spirit Beasts. The ghostly thing's tone was filled with unparalleled awe and admiration. It continued, Its power cannot be described with simple words. You only need to know one thing to understand. 10,000 years ago, in order to suppress its rise, the three strongest human masters on Heaven Stage Island joined forces to fight it. However, the final result was that it was never defeated. Never defeated also meant never winning. However, Lin Yi was still in awe because in the face of the three strongest human masters joining forces, not being defeated meant victory. Lin Yi was only a master in the early stage of the Foundation Establishment realm. He was only at the beginning stage on Heaven Stage Island. He had no idea how strong the strongest person could be, but this did not prevent him from imagining the scene of that battle. That battle must have been a great battle that was recorded in history. Ever since that battle, no one has been able to stop its footsteps. It has defeated the most powerful spirit beasts one by one and made them submit to its feet. They followed it to garrison the South Island of Heaven Stage Island, dominating a region of its own. From then on, the so-called Spirit Beast clan came into being. The ghostly thing sighed. Lin Yi interrupted with some doubts. Senior Ghost, since the Spirit Beast clan is in the South Island, then it should be rare to see them in other places. Why are there so many spirit beasts in the back mountain? Spirit beasts are different from human beings. It is natural for all races to coexist peacefully. Some are even born to feed on spirit beasts of other races. If they are all put together, it will definitely be a mess. The South Island was once in turmoil because of this problem, but later it was suppressed by the King of Spirit Beasts and he left a rule. Spirit beasts of all races can only enter the South Island when they reach a certain level and are able to completely restrain their animal instincts. Before that, they can only be scattered everywhere as before. For example, the spirit beasts that you've seen in the back of the mountain are killing each other or human cultivators, but the spirit beasts have never interfered. Chapter 3670. Lin, he suddenly understood. So, before being recognized by the South Island, the spirit beasts in the back mountain are not part of the spirit beast clan, and only those particularly powerful spirit beasts are qualified to go to the South Island, right? So, aren't the spirit beasts in the back mountain the leftovers from the South Island? That's right, but not all powerful spirit beasts are willing to join the South Island. After all, after joining the South Island, although you human cultivators don't dare to attack them, they will still be subject to various restrictions. So there are still many powerful spirit beasts who don't belong to the spirit beast clan. It's the same as many grassroots rogue cultivators who don't want to join sections. After a pause, the ghost said in a serious tone, "According to my perception, there are many powerful spirit beasts in the back mountain who are powerful enough to join the South Island. Some of them are even comparable to the top masters of the spirit beast clan. Since they stay here, it means that they are not willing to join the South Island. This is a loss for the whole spirit beast clan. Comparable to the top masters of the spirit beast clan? How powerful are they? How are they compared with the ghost-eyed golden eagle just now?" Lin E asked curiously. Ghost-eyed golden eagle? Yeah, although that guy's talent and strength are not bad, and it's not a big problem for him to join the South Island if he continues to grow, but compared with the few I mentioned, he's not at the same level at all. The ghost laughed mockingly. Really? Lin, he was a little dumbfounded. With the personal experience just now, a fierce bird like the ghost-eyed golden eagle was already a very powerful existence in his eyes. But in the ghost's mouth, it seemed to be not worth mentioning at all. Kid, the ones I'm talking about are all in the core area of the back mountain. As for their strength, let me put it this way. As long as you walk in front of them, they will only need to blink, and you'll be dead. The ghostly thing laughed strangely. Jia Jia. Lenny froze. He thought that the ghost was exaggerating a little. Although he felt that the ghost's words were a little exaggerated, he still couldn't help being frightened and creeped out. They could kill him with a blink. Intuition told Lin that what the ghost said was not a lie. In the core of the inner circle of the back mountain, there might really be such a powerful existence. It could be seen that the three great pavilions had their reasons for setting up layers of restrictions in the back mountain. Otherwise, if someone were to barge in blindly, they wouldn't even know how they died. Ghost Senior, how do you compare to them when you're at your peak? Lenny asked with a hopeful look on his face. If they were placed on the North Island of Heaven Island, they wouldn't be able to survive. Your strength is indeed extraordinary, but if you go to the South Island. I'm an elder of the Spirit Beast clan, and my strength is enough to rank in the top 5. What do you think? An elder whose strength is ranked in the top 5? Isn't that a top-notch being among the Spirit Beasts? Although Lin, he had long guessed that the ghost had an extraordinary origin, he never thought that it would be extraordinary to this extent. It was actually a core figure of the South Island, which was equivalent to Su Lingchong's grandfather. This was a person that Lin, he had to respect. He didn't expect to have one by his side. If that was the case, if the first thing he encountered in the secular world was a ghost at its peak, it wouldn't even need to blink its eyes. Would he have died directly? Recalling the situation of their first encounter, Lin, he couldn't help but feel lucky. Fortunately, he had encountered this guy's incomplete spirit at the beginning, otherwise he would have died long ago. Senior Ghost. No, Senior Spirit Beast. Since you're an elder of the Spirit Beast clan, why did you appear in the secular world? Lin, he couldn't help asking. Compared to the Spirit Beast clan, there were many human masters on Heaven Stage Island, but he had never heard of anyone taking the initiative to return to the secular world from Heaven Stage Island. The ghost was silent for a moment. Instead of answering directly, it asked, "I'm afraid you still have a question that you haven't asked. You're wondering why I fell into such a miserable state since I was so powerful at the beginning, right?" Lin, he smiled awkwardly. He did have this doubt, but he was afraid to expose the ghost's scars, so he was too embarrassed to ask. As one of the top 5 existences in the Spirit Beast clan, there should be few opponents at the ghost level. Even if there was someone stronger than him, he could at least run away if he couldn't beat them. It was really unimaginable that he had fallen into such a state with only an incomplete spirit. The ghost sighed and slowly said, "The existence of the Spirit Beast clan, in the end, is condensed on the Spirit Beast King. When it was around, the Spirit Beast clan only had one voice and could unite into an iron plate, causing all the other powerful sects to fear it. But when it was gone, it gradually returned to a state of independence. Although it was a little better than in the beginning, there were constant conflicts between the factions, and it became a plate of loose sand. The Spirit Beast King is not around? Could have been killed?" He couldn't help but exclaim. According to the ghost description, this Spirit Beast King could be said to be invincible in the world. Even the top 3 human masters couldn't do anything to it. He really couldn't think of anyone who could deal with this epic existence. This matter actually started from 8 years ago. The ghost sighed and said, 8 years ago, the heaven and earth spiritual energy in the entire heavenly island began to thin. At that time, everyone noticed it, but no one knew why. At this time, on the middle island of the heavenly island, 2 mysterious people suddenly appeared and gathered all the big shots on the island for a meeting to discuss countermeasures. Of course, only those with top strength were qualified to participate. Even I couldn't. As for how the meeting went, I don't know, because from then on, our Spirit Beast King disappeared together with those top experts. Disappeared? Lin Yi's heart suddenly moved. 2 mysterious people? Why was this so similar to what happened in the secular world? Back then, it was his master and old Lin who took away those peak late-stage, heaven-stage, great perfection experts. Why did the same thing happen on the heavenly island? But it was pushed back by 5 years. However, Lin didn't think that these 2 people were old Lin, because old Lin was still in the secular world. But could one of these 2 people be his master? Chapter 3671. Their strength was unfathomable. The deputy island master of the Middle Island was not convinced, but in the end, even with the ghost's strength, its voice could not help but tremble as it recalled. He died a horrible death. He was beaten to death. He was stunned. What kind of place was the Middle Island? It was the most powerful island among the 5 heaven rank islands. Even if the deputy island master was not as powerful as the island master, to be beaten to death in one blow was really. As for where they came from, no one knew, because no one on the island had seen them. I only heard one of them call the other uncle, so the 2 of them might be relatives. The ghost said, "Uncle? Relatives?" He was even more confused, but this was a question he didn't even know what it was, so naturally he wouldn't be able to get an answer. The ghostly thing continued. After the disappearance of the Spiritual Beast King, the Spiritual Beast clan, which used to be united under its suppression, began to gradually split up. A few elders went their own way, ambitious to become the new Spiritual Beast King. This was not difficult to understand. As long as one was a top master, they would definitely have their own ambitions. When the Spiritual Beast King was around, they did not dare to show it. However, once there was no such powerful existence above them, their ambitions would awaken like instincts. After all, if one had the strength to compete for the supreme position, why would he be willing to be under someone else? The few elders' strength was about the same, and no one was willing to submit to the other. Thus, they formed a few forces, each occupying a part of the South Island. In this way, there were internal conflicts and internal troubles. Outside, there were many human sects eyeing the Spiritual Beast clan covetously. If this goes on, it is inevitable that the Spiritual Beast clan will fall apart. After thinking about it, I'm afraid the key to breaking out of this predicament lies with the Spiritual Beast King, the ghost said slowly. Spiritual Beast King? Didn't he disappear? Lenny could not help but ask in surprise. The ghost shook its head and said, "That's right. The Spiritual Beast King has indeed gone missing. but he left behind a bloodline in the secular world. As long as we can find his descendant and find a way to awaken the power of his bloodline, he can become the new spiritual beast king and command the spiritual beast clan. Is this possible? Lin Yi felt that the ghost's idea was a little wishful thinking. Even if you found the descendant of the spirit beast king, he was still born in the secular world. Even if there's a way to awaken his bloodline power, his strength shouldn't be as strong as the spirit beast king's. How are we going to convince these ambitious spirit beast elders? This kind of plot was similar to how the assistant ministers supported the young emperor after the death of the emperor. Even if they recognized the young emperor's position on the surface, in reality, the power was still in the hands of the assistant ministers. The young emperor was just a puppet that was manipulated by others. From Lin Yi's point of view, without sufficient strength, even if the ghost managed to find the descendant of the spirit beast king, it would not be able to do so. In the end, he might not even be able to become a puppet emperor. It was very likely that the spiritual beast clan's elders would not acknowledge his position at all. As for commanding the spiritual beast clan, that was out of the question. There's something you don't know. Kid, you should have heard of the level suppression between spirit beasts before, right? The ghostly thing didn't answer, but asked a question instead. Lenny nodded. I've heard of it. It's said that between spirit beasts, apart from their strength, there's an innate level suppression. One level suppresses the other, and there's never been such a thing as fighting an enemy with a higher level. That's right. Only between spirit beasts of the same level, strength will determine who's stronger and who's weaker. Otherwise, there's no need to fight at all. The low-level spirit beasts themselves will shrink back in fear. The ghost paused, then added, however, this rule is only limited to spirit beasts below the heavenly way. When the spirit beast strength grows to the heavenly way, which is above the foundation establishment stage, it will possess super high spiritual intelligence and be able to break through this level suppression. In other words, even if it's a naturally lower level spirit beast, as long as it's strong enough, it can still kill a higher level spirit beast that's weaker than it. Taking the few powerful spirit beasts that Lin Yi had encountered before, for example, the ghost-eyed golden eagle's strength was naturally higher than a nine-tailed cloud-piercing leopard's. In general, its strength would also be much stronger than the nine-tailed cloud-piercing leopard. However, it must be known that even a powerful spirit beast like the ghost-eyed golden eagle wouldn't be born with the powerful strength of the foundation establishment middle stage. When it was in its infancy, its strength might only be at the earth stage or even lower. At this time, if it encountered a nine-tailed cloud-piercing leopard that was below the heaven stage, even if its true combat strength was stronger than the other party could rely on its natural spiritual beast pressure to scare it away. However, if they were both adults that had broken through the heavenly way, assuming that the nine-tailed cloud-piercing leopard had the strength of the foundation establishment early stage, and the ghost-eyed golden eagle had the strength of the foundation establishment early stage, the nine-tailed cloud-piercing leopard's spiritual beast pressure would be useless. The ghost-eyed golden eagle could rely on its powerful strength to kill it instead. But in this case, isn't the descendant of the spirit beast king even more useless? Since the level suppression is only effective for those below the heavenly way, those powerful spirit beast elders don't need to care about it at all. After listening to this explanation, Lin Yi was even more puzzled. No, the level suppression rule that this old man told you is applicable to all spirit beasts, but the spirit beast king is an exception. He is an existence that surpasses all rules. His bloodline is naturally the king among spirit beasts. The ghostly thing's calm tones suddenly had an additional trace of scorching heat and reverence. Surpasses all rules, a natural king? Lin Yi's heart trembled. His bloodline can naturally kill all spirit beasts. Even if it's a powerful spirit beast above the heavenly way stage, or even elders like us, in front of his bloodline, we can only bow our heads in submission. Therefore, as long as we can find his descendant and awaken his bloodline, Even the weakest yellow-level spirit beast can suppress the entire spirit beast clan and not let anyone have any disloyal thoughts. The ghostly thing said excitedly, "This is really exaggerated." Lin couldn't help but open his mouth wide. Regardless of whether they were strong or weak, they could kill all spirit beasts. This kind of unreasonable level suppression was practically like cheating. Being able to suppress the entire spirit beast clan from birth. Was there anything more exaggerated and shameless than this in this world? If that was the case, not only the spirit beast clan, but the entire spirit beast world was simply the back garden of the spirit beast king's family. As long as their bloodline was passed down, all spirit beasts from top to bottom could only work for them. There was absolutely no possibility of a counterattack. Chapter 3672. In this case, if we can find the descendants of the Spirit Beast King, we can really solve the problem of the Spirit Beast clan. Lenny thought for a while and then asked, "Senior, did you go to the secular world because of this?" "Yes." The ghost nodded. "Then how did you become like this?" Lin, he asked with a strange expression. With a ghost's strength, it should be considered powerful even in the entire Heaven Stage Island. In the secular world, it should be invincible. How did it fall into such a miserable state? Its body was gone, and only an incomplete spirit was left. The ghost smiled bitterly and said, "Boy, you also know that there is a spirit chi boundary between Heaven Stage Island and the secular world. Not only is it not easy to come up from the secular world to Heaven Stage Island, but it is also very troublesome to go down from Heaven Stage Island to the secular world." "Is that so?" Lin, he was stunned. He only knew that the spirit chi boundary restricted the entrance to Heaven Stage Island from the secular world, but he didn't expect that the return journey was the same. Wouldn't it be troublesome to go back to the secular world in the future? When you were teleported from the secular world to Heaven Stage Island, there must be a cultivator of the 5 elements and 7 inheritors to suppress the spirit chi boundary. Then, there must be a demon sect disciple to absorb the 5 evils devil chi released by the boundary to open a gap. It was the same for me to go down from Heaven Stage Island to the secular world, but I didn't have the help of an inheritor, so I could only rely on my own strength to break through. Even now, the ghost seemed to have a lingering fear when it talked about this matter. Lin, he was speechless. So many people, including himself, had to go through so much trouble to barely break through the spirit chi boundary, but the ghost actually relied on the strength of one person to break through. How strong was it? In the end, I successfully descended into the secular world, but the price I paid was serious injuries. The spiritual energy in the secular world was too poor, and there was no way to heal and recover. After wandering for a few years, I still couldn't find the king's bloodline. In the end, I was seriously injured and died. The ghost sighed. Lin, he wanted to express his condolences, but when he saw the black mist in front of him, he swallowed the words that were on the tip of his tongue. Lin, he rolled his eyes and choked for a while. He couldn't help but complain in his heart, "Since I'm already seriously injured and on the verge of death, what is this thing in front of me?" When the ghost noticed Lin Yi's strange expression, it explained, "If it was any other spiritual beast, it would have been annihilated long ago. However, my innate ability is rather special. I can preserve my primordial spirit after death." "I see." Lin, he suddenly understood. Although the ghost didn't say what his talent was, he couldn't help but think of Zhong Pingliang. He had been possessed by August Patriarch Wild Dragon's nascent divinity. Lin Yi reckoned that the ghost's innate ability should not be too far off from the everyday sect's secret technique of preserving one's primordial spirit. The ghost then fell silent. As for what happened after it became a nascent spirit, it didn't continue to say. But Lin Yi could guess that it must have wandered around miserably until it met him. Before this, the ghost gave Lin Yi a feeling that, besides being mysterious, there was also an indescribable stubbornness. But after listening to these words, he suddenly felt that the experience of this senior ghost was simply a bitter tear. Who knew the bitterness? Then, are you going to the South Island next? Lin, he asked cautiously. It depends on the situation. With my current appearance, what can I do if I go back to the South Island? If I don't have the strength, it's better to not see it and not worry about it. The ghost laughed at itself, paused for a moment, and then said, when your strength reaches a certain level, I may ask you for a favor. But now, you better focus on your cultivation first. If you dare to go to the South Island with your little strength, you won't even be able to fill the gap between people's teeth. Lin, he was speechless and laughed. Although what the ghost said was the truth, this kind of word was a bit too shocking. But anyway, now that he had figured out the ghost's origin, Lin Yi's hanging heart finally fell to the ground. At the same time, he secretly rejoiced in his heart. With such a spiritual B-senior as a backer, even if he didn't have powerful strength now, he was still a huge treasure. After a quiet night, when Lin Yi recovered to his peak state and came out of the space of the jade pendant, it was already the next day. Since the heart-devouring exquisite grass was in his hand, the main purpose of this trip had been achieved. For Lin Yi, the next step was quite a bit without any desire. Of course, the so-called without desire didn't mean doing nothing. It was rare for him to participate in the newcomer's trial test. If he didn't get the first place in the trial test, Lin Yi would feel sorry for Thunder Pig, the treasure-hunting cheating tool. After all, the reward of a Foundation establishment pill and 10 pieces of spiritual jades was quite tempting even for Lin Yi. The value of the Foundation establishment pill was needless to say. Even if Lin Yi didn't need it, it was a good thing for Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai. As their leader, Lin Yi had to at least fight for some benefits for them in order to make them loyal to him. As for the 10 pieces of spiritual jades, Lin Yi was in urgent need of spiritual jades. Moreover, these 10 pieces of spiritual jades were in his hands so openly. Meng Jueguang and the other unscrupulous guys would definitely think of ways to exchange for them with waste jades. In that case, for Lin Yi, the value would not just be 10 pieces of spiritual jades, but at least 30 pieces of spiritual jades. This was not a small number. Releasing Thunder Pig, Lu Ming searched for spiritual herbs nearby to quickly increase his points. Following the map, he identified the direction and headed towards the Three Creeks mouth that Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai had agreed on before the trial began. Because of the landmark terrain on the map, Lin Yi could easily confirm his position after determining the direction. Although according to the agreement, he only needed to arrive at the Three Creeks mouth at noon the day before the trial ended. So he still had an extra day. Lin Yi's current position was too far away from the Three Creeks mouth. Adding on the fact that he had to spend some energy gathering spiritual herbs along the way, and adding on the fact that it was inconvenient to move at night, it was already not too early to set off. After a whole day of trekking, with the help of Thunder Pig, the treasure-hunting cheating tool, Lin Yi's points on the basket had already risen to a high of 1,808 points. This number of points was comparable to the best score in all the previous newcomers' trials. Chapter 3673. After all, as an alchemist, even if he wasn't a mainstream alchemist, he still had to prepare his own medicinal herb storehouse. Otherwise, he would have to make a trip to the market to buy all the medicinal herbs he needed to refine a pill in the future. Many of them might even be like the heart-devouring exquisite grass that he couldn't buy even if he wanted to. That was simply a scam. With such a medicinal herb storehouse, although it was inevitable that he would need to collect some specific medicinal herbs, it would save him some unnecessary trouble. At least he wouldn't need to run around for some basic medicinal herbs and waste too much energy. At noon the next day, Lin Yi appeared at the Three Creek mouth as promised. He originally thought that Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai would arrive soon. Even if it was difficult to locate them in the dense forest of the back mountain, the Three Creek mouth that he chose was still very recognizable. Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai were heaven stage great perfection experts, so they wouldn't be so weak. However, He wandered around the Three Creek mouth and waited for a full hour, but he didn't see the two of them. He couldn't help but mutter in his heart. Did the two of them encounter some trouble? If the two of them came at different times, it would be understandable. After all, in the outskirts of the back mountain, unexpected things might happen during the journey. It was normal to not be able to reach the destination according to the plan. However, the two of them were nowhere to be seen, so there was a problem. Could it be that Meng Tong and his gang made a move on them in advance? Lin Yi's heart moved slightly. Although judging from the time, it was the last day for the newcomers to return to the back mountain hall. Snatching at this time would be the best choice to maximize the benefits. But on the other hand, any newcomer would definitely be extra careful at this time and wouldn't easily leave any flaws. And if he did the opposite, he would make a move a little earlier. Although he would gain less in this way, he could catch the target off guard. This was not necessarily a bad choice. According to the performance before the trial, Meng Tong and his gang were definitely looking for an opportunity to make a move. Lin Yi originally thought that the other party's main target would be him. After all, he had always been a thorn in the other party's side, but he didn't think that these people would first look for Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai. If Meng Tong's conjecture was correct, then this fellow, Meng Tong, had indeed made some progress. If he dared to directly bring people to stop him, He wouldn't mind showing him why flowers were so red. But if he skipped him and directly looked for Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai, even he wouldn't be able to come up with a suitable countermeasure. The most troublesome problem was that he didn't know where Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai were. It had to be known that there was no such thing as a cell phone communication device on Heaven Stage Island. Even if there was, there wouldn't be a signal. And if he rashly went out to look for them, not to mention that the possibility of finding the two in this vast mountain forest was very slim, what if his guess was wrong? If it was Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai, it was because they encountered some other trouble and were delayed. If he left Three Creek Mouth at this time, he would really miss the opportunity to meet the two of them. The location of Three Creek Mouth was a place that was relatively easy to identify on the map provided by the back mountain hall. Since Yi and his gang would set this place as the gathering point, then what about Meng Tong and his gang? They had the advantage in numbers, so if they wanted to gather, they would need such a highly recognizable location. Could it be that they wouldn't come here? And if his guess was really wrong, and Yi rashly left this place to look for the two of them, by the time Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai came here with great difficulty, the situation would be even more dangerous. After thinking for a while, Yi finally decided to wait at Three Creek Mouth for another half a day. This was also the wisest choice he could make at this moment. In the next half a day, if Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai arrived, then it would naturally be a happy ending. If Meng Tong and his gang arrived, then it wouldn't be a bad thing. With Lin Yi's strength, it would be more than enough to deal with a group of them. As for the last possibility, if Lin Yi didn't wait for anyone here, then although it wasn't good news, at least it would let Lin Yi confirm one thing. Xiao Ran and his gang were really in trouble, and he was basically sure that it was Meng Tong and his gang's doing. While waiting, Yi let the Skybolt pig search for elixirs near Three Creek Mouth. Half a day passed in a flash, and the sky was about to turn dark in the blink of an eye. However, from the beginning to the end, Yi still didn't see anyone. With that, Yi had a pretty good grasp of the situation. Xiao Ran and Xiao Luo were most likely ambushed by Meng Tong's group. Xiao Ran was originally a Heaven Realm full circle expert. After this period of cultivation, he should have touched the barrier of the heavenly Tao. As for Xiao Honkai, although she was originally at the peak of Heaven Realm late stage, she had now successfully advanced to Heaven Realm full circle. Among the group of newcomers in Blue Cloud Pavilion, the two of them weren't weak. In a one-on-one fight, they should have a good chance of winning. However, the problem was that two fists couldn't fight against four hands. The other newcomers weren't easy to deal with. Even if they couldn't beat the two of them in a one-on-one fight, they were still Heaven Realm full circle experts. Facing so many people, even if Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai ran into each other, they definitely had no chance of winning. They could only escape. If it was someone else, even if they escaped, they would definitely escape in the direction of Three Creek Mouth. After all, if they could meet up with Lin E on the way, they would have more strength. However, Lin E knew that with their honest character, once they really encountered such trouble, they would definitely not take half a step in the direction of Three Creek Mouth. Instead, they would choose the opposite direction, because if they ran in the direction of Three Creek Mouth, although they had the chance to meet up with Lin E, they would also transfer the danger to Lin E. No matter how confident they were in Lin Yi's strength, they didn't think that he could deal with more than 10 Heaven Realm full circle experts led by Meng Tong at the same time. After all, like the others, they didn't know that Lin E was now a Foundation Establishment early stage expert. They thought that Lin E was just a Heaven Realm full circle expert who was slightly stronger than the others. Because of this concern, according to Lin Yi's speculation, the final choice that the two would make was to abandon the Rook to protect the General. In other words, by abandoning themselves, they would ensure Lin Yi's safety. Chapter 3674. Lin Yi took out the map and decided to make an exception and travel through the night. He had to get ahead of Meng Tong's group and reach the only way back to the back mountain hall. Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongsai's current situation could only be described in two ways. Either the herbs had been stolen, or the herbs had not been stolen and they were still on the road to escape. Regardless of the outcome, the two of them, along with Meng Tong's group, had to return to the back mountain hall before noon. Otherwise, according to the bald elder at the back mountain hall, no matter who it was, they would die a horrible death. This was simple. Lin E only had to rush to the back mountain hall before everyone else. Whether he met Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai first or Meng Tong's group first, he would be able to solve the problem. As long as he had great strength, no matter how complicated the problem was, it could be easily solved. As soon as he thought about it, Lin E put the Skybolt pig into the space in the jade pendant and immediately set off. It was said before that in the back mountains, even in the outer area where the danger level was the lowest, it was still extremely dangerous for a Foundation Establishment practitioner like Lin E to move around at night. This was because not only would his senses be weakened, it would be easy for him to get lost, and it would be easy for him to run into powerful spirit beasts that he would not see during the day. One must know that by nature, many spirit beasts would only come out at night to look for food. Simply put, if Lin E had a 50% chance of winning against an early-stage Foundation Establishment spirit beast during the day, then at night, he might not even have a 30% chance of winning. No matter how strong a cultivator was, there was one thing that could not be changed. Humans were not nocturnal creatures. The night had always stood on the opposite side of humans. Fortunately, the moonlight was still bright that night, so Lin E would not get lost halfway. Along the way, he passed by a few powerful spirit beasts. Among them, there were even dangerous existences that were comparable to the nine-tailed cloud leopard. But in the end, Lin E dodged all of them. Of course, even if they couldn't avoid it, it wouldn't be a problem. After all, the spirit beast god was still guarding the space inside the jade pendant. Wouldn't it be a piece of cake to scare away these spirit beasts that were only at the early stage of the Foundation Establishment realm? After traveling for an entire night, Lin E finally arrived at his destination when the sky turned bright. His current location was less than 20 miles away from the rear mountain hall. It was a rare open space in the periphery of the rear mountain. The reason for this was that there was an ancient tree that was at least 300 feet tall growing here, in a dense forest that was no taller than 100 feet. This ancient tree could be said to be a crane and a flock of chickens. Its huge canopy blocked most of the sunlight, so naturally, nothing could grow below it. Thus, it looked rather empty. Standing on the canopy, the excellent field of vision meant that he could perfectly monitor everything around him. This happened to be the only way back to the rear mountain hall. As for the movements of the other newcomers from the soaring pavilion and the mysterious pavilion, Lin E had no way of knowing. But at least the newcomers from the Blue Cloud Pavilion who were placed in this direction would not be able to slip past him. Standing at Lin Yi's height and looking down, it was impossible. If one or two people moved stealthily, there might be a possibility of missing them. But if Meng Tong and the others moved together, it was impossible. After standing guard for half an hour, as Lin Yi expected, a dense commotion came from not far below, startling a flock of weak birds. There were people approaching quickly, and there were quite a few of them. Lin Yi observed with rapt attention. The corners of his mouth curled into a playful smile. Judging from the commotion, those people seemed to be heading right for him. "Brother Xiao, you go first. I'll bring up the rear for you. Anyway, all the herbs on me have been snatched away. They can't do anything to me." Xiao Honkai followed closely behind Xiao Ran and suggested anxiously. Unlike Lin Yi, who was placed in the most dangerous area of the rear mountain, Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongsai's initial drop-off point did not receive any special treatment. In the beginning, the two of them had a relatively smooth journey and collected quite a number of herbs. But that was where the problem arose. Their drop-off point was not far from the other newcomers. Just a day later, the two of them naturally encountered the other newcomers. Without any surprise, they were targeted by Meng Tong and the others. Just as the two of them were on their way to Sanchiko to meet up with Lin Yi, Xiao Honkai was the first to be ambushed. With his strength, he could not deal with Meng Tong and the others. Not only were the herbs that he had painstakingly collected stolen, he was also heavily injured. If it wasn't for the bald elder's repeated warnings not to kill anyone, he would have been the first newcomer to die in this trial. After the successful ambush and ruthlessly ridiculing Xiao Honkai, Meng Tong and the others turned to deal with Xiao Ran. However, they did not expect that Xiao Honkai, who was tailing them, would find Xiao Ran first. This caused Meng Tong's ambush plan to fail, and the two of them successfully broke out of the encirclement. Just as Lin Yi had predicted, the two of them did not want to implicate Lin Yi, so they decided to give up on Sanchiko. Instead, they turned and ran towards the rear mountain hall. As long as they could reach the rear mountain hall before Meng Tong and the others could catch up to them, even if the trial ended, Meng Tong and the others would not be able to steal Xiao Ran's herbs. That was how the current scene came to be. The two of them were running wildly in front, while Meng Tong and his group were chasing after them about 100 feet behind them. Xiao Honkai was already injured, and when they broke out of the encirclement, Xiao Ran had already consumed a large amount of his vital energy. After this period of running with all his strength, his vital energy was about to be exhausted. If this continued before they could reach the rear mountain hall, the two of them would be the first to fall. At this time, Xiao Honkai had made the suggestion. It was obvious that she had the idea of being barefoot and not afraid of wearing shoes. In any case, he had no more herbs, and Meng Tong and the others did not dare to kill him directly. Dragging it out for a while was better than the two of them collapsing together. Unexpectedly, Xiao Ran was panting heavily as he rejected the idea. "No, although they do not dare to kill you directly, you have ruined their plans. In a fit of anger, they might cripple you and abolish your cultivation. I cannot let you take this risk." Hearing Xiao Ran's words, Xiao Honkai was suddenly shocked, and her heart was filled with a lingering fear. Yes, although the rules of the trial forbade killing, there was no rule that said that people could not be abolished. If her cultivation was really abolished, she would become a cripple. That would be worse than death. Chapter 3675. Xiao Ran shook his head helplessly. "Let's just take it one step at a time. The worst-case scenario is that the spiritual herbs will be stolen. It's not a big deal. That's the only way. If only Boss Lin Yi was here. Although he might not be able to deal with so many people at once, he would have a way." Xiao Honkai sighed. Unknowingly, the way he addressed Lin Yi had changed from the polite brother Lin to Boss Lin Yi. Although it sounded vulgar, it was more intimate and respectful. Xiao Ran laughed bitterly. "I actually hope that he's not here. If his spiritual herbs are also stolen, then we really won't gain anything from this trial. It's a pity that my spiritual herbs will definitely be taken by Meng Tong. If that happens, even if Boss Lin he doesn't get implicated by us, it will be very difficult for him to get first place. Xiao Honkai sighed dejectedly. His luck in this trial was actually quite good. In less than 2 days, his points were already close to 500. If his spiritual herbs weren't stolen and he was able to complete his mission smoothly, there was a high chance that he could get a good ranking in the end. But now, all his words were in vain. Not only did he not get a single spiritual herb, but it also had the opposite effect of helping the enemy and became an obstacle for Lin Yi. Even if Meng Tong gets first place in the end, Boss Lin Yi still has a chance to fight for the top 3. But if my spiritual herbs are also stolen, then even the top 3 will be uncertain. Therefore, the spiritual herbs on my back cannot fall into their hands. Xiao Ran looked at the basket on his back and said with a determined expression. He was ambushed by Meng Tong's group later than Xiao Honkai, so he had more time to collect spiritual herbs. Now, he had 523 points. This result could only be considered average in previous years. But this year's situation was different. Meng Tong's group began to gather at noon on the second day of the trial. Although they successfully robbed Xiao Honkai, it was a very risky choice. This was because the time they had to collect spiritual herbs was also greatly reduced. In other words, their current situation was not good. Only a few of them would be able to reach the threshold of 500 points. If they managed to escape, Xiao Ran's 523 points could possibly get him into the top 5. Even the top 3 was not impossible. In that case, even if Meng Tong got first place, Lin Yi and Xiao Ran would still get a good ranking in the end. They'd go for wool and come home shorn. However, if even Xiao Ran's share was snatched away, then the situation would be very different. After ensuring that Meng Tong was first place, he could casually distribute the 500 points. This group of people could easily monopolize the top 3. In that case, not only would Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai gain nothing, even Lin Yi would only get 3 pieces of spiritual jades for the 4th to 10th place. Compared to Meng Tong's bountiful harvest, this was simply a tragic sight. So, Xiao Ran could not let Meng Tong's group succeed no matter what. This was not only for himself, but also for Lin Yi. Alright, did you notice that Meng Tong and Li Zhengming did not bring their baskets? Xiao Ran suddenly asked. Xiao Honkai was stunned for a moment. She thought for a while and said, I think so. If you didn't mention it, I wouldn't have noticed it. Could it be that these 2 people had already been robbed by Boss Lin Yi and didn't even leave their baskets? That's impossible. These baskets are the property of the back mountain hall. There can't be any mistakes. Even if they are allowed to rob each other, the baskets must still be left behind. Isn't your basket still on your back? Xiao Ran pointed at Xiao Honkai's back. Although all the spiritual herbs had been robbed, Xiao Honkai was still carrying the basket on her back. It was just that her points were displayed as 0. That's true. Then there's only one possibility left. These 2 people must have hidden their baskets before they came out to rob the spiritual herbs. I guess they were afraid that something unexpected would happen and Boss Lin Yi would rob us instead. Xiao Honkai speculated. Xiao Ran nodded. I think so too. But the others who came with them still had their spiritual herbs. Only these 2 people hid their spiritual herbs. How cunning. As the 2 of them spoke, they had already reached the empty space under the giant tree. Their hearts were immediately filled with joy. They had an impression of this giant tree. Being able to reach here meant that they were not far from the back mountain hall. However, before the 2 of them could finish their joy, 2 figures suddenly appeared in front of them, causing their eyelids to twitch. These 2 figures were Meng Tong and Li Zhengming, who had been chasing closely behind them. Are you 2 born in the year of the rabbit? You run pretty fast. Unfortunately, you still can't escape from my grasp. Meng Tong laughed sinisterly as he blocked the front. Among the newcomers in the Blue Cloud Pavilion, other than the freak Lin Yi, he and Li Zhengming were outstanding in strength. Moreover, they were not like Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai, who were exhausted and injured. It was not surprising that they could block the front. In fact, if not for Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai running with all their might, they would have been blocked by Meng Tong and company. Xiao Ran's heart sank. He turned his head to look behind him. The other newcomer's footsteps were getting closer. If he was entangled by Meng Tong and company, the consequences would be disastrous. Don't stop. Leave these two to me. Before Xiao Ran could react, Xiao Honkai had already taken the lead and rushed towards Meng Tong and company. Xiao Ran took a deep breath. Since things had come to this, he had no other choice. He could only bite the bullet and break through the encirclement. Seeing the two approaching him quickly, Meng Tong could not help but laugh contemptuously. Two idiots who don't know what's good for them. They know that they are courting death, yet they still dare to come to me. Li Jingming, I'll leave the injured lumber waste to you. As for Xiao Ran, leave him to me. Li Jingming looked at him. At this moment, both Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai were like an arrow at the end of its flight. However, there was still a difference between the two of them. The biggest difference was that one of them had elixirs, while the other didn't. Meng Tong had a cloth bag tied on his back. Inside it were the elixirs that he had snatched from Xiao Honkai. Now that he had his eyes on Xiao Ran, wouldn't it mean that the elixirs would belong to him in the end? Wouldn't he leave none for himself? All right, but I want half of the elixirs on Xiao Ran. Li Jingming said. His demands were not high. From the beginning, he had never thought of fighting with Meng Tong for first place. As long as he could ensure that the top three would get the Foundation Establishment pill, he would be satisfied. Chapter 3676. Unlike them, Lin Yi did not have to waste a lot of time chasing and intercepting them. He had plenty of time to collect spiritual herbs. Meng Tong looked at them and curled his lips. As long as I can get first place, I'll share some with you. What are you waiting for? Stop being so wishy-washy. All right. Li Jingming swallowed his anger and charged at Xiao Honkai. Don't waste your energy. Just give up. You can't escape. How will you know if you don't try? As Xiao Honkai spoke, he gathered all his remaining true chi on his palm. 20 forms of cold iron palm. To prevent accidents, heaven-grade divine weapons were not allowed to be used in the trial. Of course, with Xiao Hongzai's background, it was impossible for him to have any heaven-grade divine weapons. In an instant, a visible giant flaming saber came crashing down. This was his trump card. At its peak, it could severely injure an unguarded heaven-grade full-cycle master. Although its power had been weakened, it was still not to be underestimated. Go, Xiao Ran. Xiao Honkai gritted his teeth and roared. If his attack landed on top of Li Jingming and Meng Tong's heads, they would definitely retreat, which would open up a path for Xiao Ran. However, before he could finish his sentence, Li Jingming did not dodge the flaming saber. Instead, he took the initiative to face it. His face was expressionless, and without warning, he threw a punch at him. Skyfrost fist. Whoosh! A strong and majestic white true chi whizzed past, and the overwhelming flaming saber disappeared in an instant, as if it had never appeared. Only shattered ice crystals were left on the ground. I told you not to waste your energy. You're no match for me right now, Li Jingming said as he glanced at Xiao Honkai. It was the same 20 styles, but Xiao Hongzai's flaming saber was completely defeated by his Skyfrost fist. It was not only because of his own strength, but also because Xiao Honkai was in a bad condition. However, for some unknown reason, Li Jingming did not attack Xiao Honkai himself. He only broke his flaming blade 20. However, just as he broke the flaming blade, Xiao Ran, who had been following behind Xiao Honkai, disappeared without a trace. When she saw his figure again, she had already successfully circled behind him. As expected, this Xiao Ran was not a simple character. Li Jingming was secretly vigilant, but he did not continue to attack. He had completed his task by stopping Xiao Honkai. If he attacked Xiao Ran now, not only would Meng Tong not be grateful, instead, he would be dissatisfied. Li Jingming, what are you doing? You were so easily bypassed. What a waste. Meng Tong cursed discontentedly from behind. Li Zhengming frowned and didn't pay any attention to him. If it weren't for his misgivings about Meng Jueguang, his eldest senior brother manager, he would have long since been unable to restrain himself from attacking Meng Tong. Relying on the fact that he was related to Meng Jueguang, he could order him around. Bossing him around, this guy really thinks he's a big shot. If he was really strong, then so be it. The key was that this guy's strength was so little. Previously, he was easily defeated by Lin Yi in front of everyone. Who knew how he could be so thick-skinned to be the boss of the newcomers in Blue Cloud Pavilion? However, dissatisfaction was dissatisfaction. Li Zhengming could only pinch his nose and bear it. Who asked him to rely on Meng Jueguang? It doesn't matter. Since that good-for-nothing Li Zhengming couldn't stop you, then I'll have no choice but to do it myself. I'll let you understand your loss. Meng Tong looked at Xiao Ran, who was rapidly approaching him, and sneered disdainfully. If it was said that facing Lin Yi, he was a little afraid. But facing Xiao Ran, who also came from the secular world, he did not put him in his eyes at all. Moreover, at this moment, Xiao Ran was exhausted. His strength was not the same as his usual state. 1,000 kicks, 20 forms. Meng Tong roared and leaped up. As his legs whistled, they turned into layers of powerful leg shadows, making it hard for people to distinguish them and defend against them. Wherever the leg shadows swept, whether it was grass, trees, sand, or stones, they were instantly crushed into powder. It turned out that the martial art he practiced was also called 1,000 kicks. It was the same as what Zhao Qibing practiced before. It was just that Xiao Ran didn't know. Although Meng Tong was defeated by Lin Yi in one move, in reality, as a native of Heaven Stage Island, his strength was not weak. If it wasn't for the freak Lin Yi, other masters of the same level would have a headache fighting him. With such power, even if Xiao Ran was at his peak, he might not be able to take it head-on. But fortunately, what he needed now was not to defeat Meng Tong, but to escape. Whoosh! Seeing that Meng Tong's heavy leg shadows were about to cover Xiao Ran, Xiao Ran's body suddenly twisted in an extremely strange way. He was obviously dodging to the left, but in the next moment he suddenly appeared on the right side of Meng Tong, directly passing through the leg shadows without any obstruction. Holy shit! How is this possible? Meng Tong was instantly dumbfounded. He was full of confidence that he could defeat Xiao Ran in one move. Who would have thought that such a strange scene would appear? Even if he was beaten to death, he would never have thought that such an ordinary country bumpkin like Xiao Ran could actually master a movement technique like Shadow Step. At this moment, the other newcomers had arrived one after another. It was such a good opportunity to show off, but in the end, Xiao Ran slipped away. Meng Tong was really embarrassed this time. With such a brilliant movement technique like Xiao Ran's, as long as he could hold on for a while longer, it would not be a problem for him to rush to the back mountain hall before the others caught up. This time, not only Meng Tong, but even Li Zhengming and the others were all dumbfounded. Stop right there. Otherwise, I will cripple Qiao Honkai and let him become a good-for-nothing Qiao. He will never be able to rise again. Meng Tong pointed at Qiao Honkai, who was surrounded by them, and shouted in exasperation. With that one sentence, Xiao Ran, who had successfully escaped, suddenly stopped in his tracks. As for the newcomers, Li Zhengming and the others, at this moment, looked at Meng Tong with disbelief. Was this guy for real, or was he just bluffing? Although the rules of the trial did not state that it was not allowed to cripple others' cultivation, it was obvious that this kind of thing was very vile. Even if the sect did not punish a person who would do such a thing to his own senior and junior brother, others would definitely be afraid and stay away. It might even cause public anger and be despised and reviled by everyone. If he really did that, not only would Meng Tong destroy Qiao Honkai, he would also destroy himself at the same time. At that time, even Meng Jueguang would not be able to save him. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference. as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.